Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Q&A. It's been quite a few months since we did the last one, so probably about time, wasn't it? Weren't we intending on doing this every month? Yeah, that never happened, did it? Ooh, sorry. Oh, well, never mind. Probably a good time to do it, considering. Things seem to be running as they should be. Okay, so how we're going to make this work, as usual, is we're going to be taking questions from the Twitch chats. You see the Twitch chat to the right of the screen, and look at that, that's my cursor, isn't it wonderful? Poke him in the eye. You'll see the list of questions there. I'll keep the chat frozen, and I'll scroll down per question. So once you've asked your question, you don't need to repeat it. You'll be able to see, based on the timestamp, where yours is in the queue. So we'll try to get through as many as possible. I don't know how long I'll spend doing this. Maybe an hour or two. We'll see. Okay. Let me just put this library on shuffle before we begin. I'd like some good tunes while I'm doing this. Absolutely. Shuffle tracks. There we go. Lovely. All right. Let's see what the next one is. Something good, please. Something great. Yeah, that one's good. I like that one. I'm going to knock the level down a little bit more. There we go. Just want it to be slightly in the background. Okay, cool. Right, well, let us begin. So, nothing really off limits outside of the usual, as in, don't ask questions about how much money I make. That's it. Everything else is kind of okay. I'll try and answer it as best as I can. Alright, well, let's kick it off then. MaxiTB has the first question saying, PC titles like XCOM 2, Star Citizen, etc. are coming out. Do you think we can expect more PC exclusive titles, and will this also mean big publishers will stop their platform parity idea in the future to stay competitive? That's a lot of questions in one, isn't it? I mean, I think it's obvious that the PC market is continuing to grow. I think the question is at what rate, and can you really accurately assess that based on something as simple as how many people are using Steam? There was a cool recent article, I think I actually linked it in today's video, which was about your target audience doesn't exist. And it was using Steam Spy data to say that actually there are a lot of Steam users, but the amount of people that regularly buy games is a lot smaller than you think. So while people might see Steam as like this fertile ground to sell millions of copies, that's actually not that often the case. That doesn't mean that big titles won't sell, though. I mean, they do. They really, really do, especially if they're aimed at the PC market specifically. And we've seen figures from, say, Ubisoft, I think, where they said that PC was their second largest demographic now. So they're getting their multi-platform releases out, and they're selling a great deal of them on PC, and there's other publishers that have said the same thing. So I have a feeling that, as a result, there are definitely companies looking at PC as less of a, we're gonna fail horribly here. But I have to wonder just how many big companies are going to continue to make PC exclusives. XCOM 2 is one of those few games in genres that really work well and sell very well on PC, but maybe not on other platforms. The reason why XCOM 2 isn't on console is because it didn't sell very well on console when they released the original. It's as simple as that. So I think it's going to depend certainly on the success of things like that. There are games that will always sell well on PC, things like the Civilization series and Grand Strategy and so on and so forth. Star Citizen, I think, is a little bit of a different beast, because what you've got is a crowd-funded game that really could only work on PC and was primarily funded on the promise of it being a super high-spec title. And obviously crowdfunding works for PC in that regard, and we get quite a few PC exclusives from that. Some of them end up being good. You know, Satellite Reign so far, haven't played enough of it to really give a good assessment, but so far it's really good. Very complicated, but really good. Planetary Annihilation maybe wasn't good on launch. It was very meh. It's now a little bit better. We do get quite a few of those titles on PC. If crowdfunding continues to be successful, I imagine we'll see a lot of PC games coming out of that, because more often than not, you can only crowdfund for one platform. You know, porting it to multiple platforms costs a lot of money. Will big publishers stop their platform parity idea? I mean, I really don't know how much they're really pushing that anyway. I know there's a lot of speculation that platform parity is a big deal, and that means that people who are on PC are getting the raw end of the stick because consoles aren't as powerful. I don't know how much of it is down to a deliberate decision and how much of it is just not putting enough time and effort and money into the PC version. Obviously, if I'm running a high-spec PC, or if anyone's running a PC that's better than the console, we want the game to run better. But I don't know how much of that is really happening, like how much of it is deliberate and how much of it is just incompetence on the part of certain publishers, like outsourcing to the wrong places. You know, you look at the port of Mad Max and it's incredible, and then you look at the port of Arkham and it's awful. And the difference between that is that the studio that had PC experience did the PC version for Mad Max. It doesn't actually run that well on console. There's actually frame rate problems on console, but it runs like a dream on PC. And it's the other way around on in the case of Arkham, where they outsourced it to Iron Galaxy. So I think it's a very complicated matter. I think it requires like a lot more discussion than I could probably give you here. Next one comes from Scrubtard that says, so how many video games do you own when you combine all platforms? Well, I mean, I know I own 1,300 on Steam. That's for certain. Let's move down a little bit there. Oh, that's not actually showing it. There we go. Yeah, okay. I'm only showing part of the chat, so I need to just double check that I'm actually showing you the question. There it is right there. How many games do you own? I don't know. I've got 1,300 on Steam. I've got, like, 20 or 30 on Origin, 20 or 30 on Uplay, and then other platforms, like, I don't own that much for PS4 and Xbox One, because there's really not a lot to own, honestly. Nothing that I would really go out of my way to buy. I mean, I own maybe, like, 15 games on PS4 at most, and the vast majority of them I don't really play. I think the only one that gets played regularly is Blaze Blue. Blaze Blue? Yeah, not Blaze Blue. Blaze Blue. The rest of them are just like, nah, whatever. I'm sure I own more stuff on PlayStation Plus than I do from actually buying it. I've got like, 20 PS3 games, 20 Xbox 360 games, decent collection of DS and 3DS, maybe 30, 40. But, it's mostly on PC. I do have like 100 Saturn games, but they're all back in the UK. Some rare stuff too, but I couldn't really bring my collection over. Okay. Moving on to Imbasuna here. Started watching wrestling again after like 10 years or something. Any suggestions where to start? Got no clue what's going on. Yeah, don't blame you. I mean, jumping back a few pay-per-views is always good. Like, watching WrestleMania is a good idea because basically what's happening now is all fallout from that. I don't want to spoil too much of it because there's a few really cool surprises in that WrestleMania, but the main storyline is basically derived from events that happened there, for the most part. So start there. I'm just trying to think which pay-per-views are worth watching, because some of them were really bad. Let's see. Elimination Chamber was okay. Extreme Rules was pretty disappointing. Money in the Bank was so-so. Battleground was actually pretty damn good. SummerSlam was mostly good. So, like, get the network, get the free-month network, watch all the pay-per-views, because that's the good shit, and then watch NXT. Because NXT's great. You can go back, I think, to 2014 and NXT, and it's all really, really good. The stuff that's been happening this year has been exceptionally good, and they also have their specials, which is NXT TakeOver. Watch those. They're not necessarily storyline relevant to the main roster, but the wrestling is much, much better than the main roster, so it's worth watching that. The problem with the network is you can watch Raw and SmackDown, but it's like a month old, because they have network deals with Sci-Fi and US. So you can watch older stuff there, but it's maybe not as useful. So yeah, watch WrestleMania and work from there. And then watch NXT. Watch everything NXT has to offer, because it's all great. Okay, moving on down. Nice and easy question. Tea or coffee? Neither. I don't really like either of them. I'll drink iced coffee, but I've never been a fan of tea. Don't like the taste of it. Don't really like regular coffee. I'll drink the iced stuff. I'll drink the stuff that is basically a milkshake at that point, I'm not a big coffee person, not a big coffee drinker. Never have been, probably never will be. What kind of viewer retention do you get for OC remix tracks during content patch videos, asks Kansokusha. About 10%. We lose 90% of the viewers once we start playing the OC remix stuff. Most people don't want to stick around for it. For me, it's like, it doesn't really matter if they do or they don't. Obviously, I'd like people to listen to that stuff, but it's niche, People are coming for gaming news. They're not necessarily coming to listen to remixes. But hell, if even 10% listen, that's still like 20,000 people hearing this guy's track. That's great. And it also gives me an excuse to keep exploring and finding new tracks on that site. So it's really like a personal self-indulgence more so than anything else. I thought for a long time about maybe doing a show based on OC Remix, but I thought it would have really limited appeal, and I didn't want to take on any more shows, because that would take a lot of editing. Back when I used to do the live internet radio, I did a lot of actual, what do you call it, DJing? Maybe not. I did a lot of music stuff. So I'd kind of like to do a show like that again, but I just don't think I've got the time for it. And I don't know necessarily if there would be enough of an audience to justify doing it. Whereas tacking one on at the end doesn't take any extra effort, you know? And it adds a little bit of spice to the show. Most people don't listen to it, but some people do. So, you know, the show gains something by doing that and doesn't really lose anything because it's right at the end. So, yeah, it's about 10% of the viewers continue to listen on to the OC Remix stuff. And that's still a decent number of people. You know, it's more exposure than a lot of OC Remix tracks usually get. So, to me, that's a positive. Moving on down, Lord Pestus, will you play Vermintide with me? No, don't play with viewers. It's just a thing we just don't do. It's not anything we've really done for the most part. I don't want to, like, raise the expectation of people. I do want to play Vermintide, though. I know I'm getting access to it at some point in the not-too-distant future, so I will definitely play it. There'll certainly be a video on it, that I can guarantee. Oh, I shouldn't have said that, should I? Because maybe now there won't be. There will most likely be a video on Vermintide. Shame it's not 40k. I mean, I'm interested to see what they do with Space Hulk. That might be intriguing, but Vermintide looks alright, you know, smacking Skaven around with big hammers and screaming for Sigmar is okay in my book. Okay, do you think the FTC ruling against Machinima and Microsoft is fair? I mean, it's certainly fair that they were ruled against. Absolutely. What they did was wrong. You know, I said this back at the start of 2014 when I talked about XP1M13. For those that don't know, for those that aren't aware, recently, Machinima was ruled against by the FTC, and it was ruled that they had engaged in deceptive advertising practices when engaged with a deal with Microsoft, which is colloquially known as XP1M13. That was the little hashtag they used to track it. And basically, they were paying people to be positive about the Xbox One and its launch titles. Like, people were being paid to be positive about Rise. Rise is fucking terrible. So maybe people should have figured it out as soon as people were saying, Rise is great! Like, aha! Now I know you're a paid shill, because no one in their right mind would say that. But it comes down to the fact that it's really important that these deals are properly disclosed and that the audience absolutely knows about them. Honestly, it seems like they got a little more than the slap on the wrist. Maybe they should have been, you know, seriously fined. But whatever the case, it's good that it happened because it puts everybody on notice. It's like, look, this kind of cowboy age has come to an end. This is serious, and we will take you to task if you break the law. Because that's what you're doing if you don't disclose this stuff. So I'm glad that, you know, I think it was totally fair. If anything, I think it should have been harsher than it was. But I think, honestly, the negative publicity and the awareness that's been raised from this is maybe even more important than just trying to be punitive financially to Machinima. It's more important that people know this shit happened, it's real, this is why it's not good, and this is why we should be vigilant about that stuff. There's nothing good about misleading your audience into getting something that you are being paid to promote. There's nothing wrong with being paid to promote things. You've got to be clear that that's what's happening. It's really not that hard. It's not difficult. We all know how to do it now. It's not like a few years ago where we had no idea what was going on. We now know for sure what is going on, and we know what we have to do. So yeah, I absolutely think it's fair, and hopefully it'll happen more. Thoughts on the new Soilwork album, asks Nice Helmet Joe. I actually haven't listened to it. I need to get around to it. I've been listening too much to Book of Souls by Iron Maiden. I do mean to listen to The Ride Majestic. The first track that they released off it, I wasn't a huge fan of, but then again, I thought The Living Infinite was probably the best thing they've ever done, so it'll take a lot to top that. Moving on to Lock and Dot's question about our cat. How's Freya doing with the flat-chested kitten syndrome? She looked good in the Toast video, but how is she really? Well, she stopped growing, like she's a runt. As a result of this syndrome where the kind of ribs don't grow together properly, she will forever be small. And obviously, like, that means she's more fragile. So you've got to be a little bit careful with how you pick her up and things like that. But she seems fine. She's a noisy little bastard. I'll tell you that for a fact. She shouts like no one's business. But yeah, she seems fine. She's doing all right. She may not live as long as a regular cat, which would suck. But ultimately, it was best that we adopted her, because otherwise she would have been unadoptable from that place. Will the lounge be returning soon, says a Kidney guy? Yeah, the problem is, like, scheduling it. Like, if I said to you, hey, we're going to do it tomorrow, that probably wouldn't be true, because we've got the big thing with Polaris tomorrow, and we've got a couple of other things that we've got to do on Friday. Like, this weekend's going to be really busy. Next week, I'm in DC from Thursday to Monday to do the cast with Red Bull for the big Archon Battleground tournament. So we want to do it. Like, it's not like we don't enjoy doing it. It's just we're really trying to find times to do it regularly, so that's the problem. And I have just got someone to help me with rules as well. Like, I've got kind of a little rules czar that is going to help me out. He's really good at learning stuff, whereas I'm fucking terrible at learning stuff. So he's going to teach me some games so that we can put stuff together that's not just like the regular stuff. Because we really want to do the stuff like play Doom. I don't know the rules for Doom. I've been trying to learn the rules for Doom, and I'm really bad when it comes to learning rules by reading. I've got to be kind of taught through play. So I need someone that is good at learning that way that can teach me. So he's going to help me with that. So hopefully we can do some more complex stuff in the future. Because I like to do stuff like Dead of Winter. I'd love to do stuff like Frag, Eldritch Horror, that sort of thing. But I don't have time to learn that stuff. And even if I did, it's very hard for me to learn it without playing it. So it's coming. It's coming. You bastard. Daydream. When's the rest of the CoxCon footage coming out? I don't know. At the moment, I think the main problem is that some of the footage had some mic issues. Like, there was a live mic somewhere, a live lavalier mic that wasn't on the panel, which means there's, like, audio and talking in there that shouldn't be, so they're trying their best to kind of fix it up, and there was some issues with some of the footage. I'm hoping the rest of it will come eventually. Obviously, like, it would be good to get the podcast out, because that was pretty funny, and I did a panel with Jen that, I don't know if that was funny, but hopefully people seem to like it anyway. So, hopefully soon. Blame Jesse. Tweet at Jesse Cox. Ask him. That's all his responsibility. I got nothing to do with it. Nano Viking, hello. Yes, I finished Psycho Pass, and what other similar anime series have you enjoyed? There's not a lot that's really similar to Psycho Pass. I mean, I imagine Ghost in the Shell standalone complex probably is, but I haven't watched it. Like, the thing I like about Psycho Pass and other anime like that, and I'm very limited in the kinds of anime that I like, is I like very tense, kind of high-action, high-stakes stuff with a minimum fan service approach. And most anime don't really give me that. Psycho Pass does, because there really wasn't any real fan service in that. It was high stakes. You know, I like the idea that the main character could drop dead at any time, that, like, nobody's safe, because that really kind of raises the tension. I did recently watch Parasite. That's really great. I like that a lot for the most part. That was pretty damn enjoyable. You know, no real fan service in that, per se. High action, very tense, gory, certainly. And tackled some pretty cool subjects. So I liked Parasite. I'd watch Parasite, honestly. I'd recommend that. That was pretty good. Outside of that, I'm still kind of watching World Trigger, which is, it's alright. Like, it's not really all that tense at the moment. It's kind of a bit more comedy in many ways, but yeah, there's very limited sort of series that I like. You know, there's the old stuff like Kenshin and Trigun and Cowboy Bebop. Yeah, the old standbys, Berserk as well. But it's difficult to find stuff that I really enjoy. I started watching Gate, and I'm not into that at all. It's way too fan-servicey, really creepy in places. No. And it doesn't seem like it's... There's got a really cool idea behind it. The idea that a gate opens in Japan, medieval forces invade, get swiftly defeated, and then Japan goes through the gate. And then it's like, what happens when a modern army encounters a sort of medieval fantasy army? But it hasn't really gone anywhere yet. And it's mostly seems to be... It's almost like a harem thing. It's like, this goofy otaku guy is somehow also a special army ranger and is somehow apparently attractive to everybody. It's weird self-insertion fanfic nonsense. I'm not a fan of it. It's too creepy. Peace to Drive. How did you first meet Jesse and Dodger? How did you form a co-optional podcast together? Well, I mean, Jesse I've known for much longer than YouTube because he was involved with some shows that we were associated with, like the 10 Ton Hammer podcast with WoW, and he also used to enter our song contests when we used to do them on the WoW Radio Network. And he did this Take On Me. That probably still exists somewhere. It's really horrific. It's really horrific. Yeah, so I kind of knew him through that and through some of his Machinima voice acting. My wife actually knew him better because she voice acted in some Machinima that he did as well. And then I got to know him a lot better, obviously, during the Cataclysm sort of arms race to get the most videos out. And I invited him to join the Game Station at that point. And as for Dodger, we just got introduced through the Game Station. Like, Husky brought Dodger in, I brought Jesse in, and we did some collab stuff with Game Station at that point, and then I eventually, you know, we got to be friends, and then the three of us were like, you know, we should do a show together, and that's where Co-optional came from. It's really that simple. So, yeah, I've known Jesse for longer than I've known Dodger, but obviously I've known them both for, like, over 5 years. Okay, here we go. Next one from C.A. Boomer Sooner. Is there a way the community could serve as a pre-screening process to help you filter out the massive 311 game back order you have? I don't think so. Not that I can tell. It would come like that seems like it would become kind of request worthy. Like, and I'm not kind of that seems like it would become a system where it would be a small group of people who would be saying you should cover this and not cover this. I don't like kind of giving that amount of power to people like that, and it also creates a lot of resentment amongst people that are not involved in that. I'm sorry, we're not playing this from Electronic Superjoy. No, let's To the Moon. That's lovely soundtrack. Awesome. Anyway, I don't really see any particular way of doing that. It's really like, it's not that hard for us to screen through the stuff that we get. It's just having time to do it all. Like, we can easily look up what each game is, and most of the time, we get an email telling us anyway, so there'll be a little blurb that I can be given by Chris. So, it does kind of get pre-screened, but it just doesn't help. You know, it doesn't accelerate the process in any way, really. It's down to the fact that there are only certain formats that work. There's only certain genres that I want to cover. I'm sort of moving WTF more towards stuff that I'm really interested in and using 15 minutes of game to do the stuff that I'm not necessarily so interested in. And just kind of trying to separate the formats out a little bit. And I don't really do what Jim does, which is like I'll go out of my way to play stuff that's probably bad. Like, I don't have the time in the day for that, and that's really, it's not the same format. You know, he likes to do that stuff and riff on it, and he's good at it. I generally don't. I can, and I've done it in the past, but, I mean, every time I've done it, like, a lot of people have come across, it's like, that was really mean. Like, you were just bashing on something. It's very difficult to do that without coming across as if you're being unnecessarily mean to an indie developer, you know, and you just kind of, the term is punching down, which I don't like that term, but it kind of encompasses it fairly well. It's like, we have a lot of power, they don't have so much power, so we can be seen as bullying them. But I think that the split between 15 minutes and WTF is kind of starting to solve that problem. I just need to do more of it. I need to keep at it. I really do. Like, the last few days has made it difficult to do that because we've been distracted by a bunch of personal drama and stuff like that. And obviously, while I'm away, it shows it's harder to do that. But, you know, my end goal is 15 minutes of game 5 days a week. Oh, this track is awesome. Anyone who can recognize what this is, by the way, then you played a very, very good game. It's from God Hand, the God Tracks original soundtrack. It's so good. Yeah. So I think it's a problem that's kind of solving itself, but there's no way to 100% solve that issue. Could I, in theory, blitz it and do like 350 minutes of game a day? Yeah. But it would be a terrible idea. Because there'd be a bunch of diminishing returns in it, and like people just get sick of being drowned in content. It's the reason why we cut down to 15-minute formats daily rather than do the big stuff, because the bigger videos are harder to digest in one sitting. And we already do enough big videos as it is, so you don't really want to do too many of those. Okay, moving on up, or moving on down. Lolligarofla. Why? Any thoughts on the upcoming XCOM 2? I mean, not yet, other than I'm excited to see it. I mean, I spent so much time playing XCOM. I watched a fairly lengthy sort of gameplay preview where they were showing like how the ship and everything worked. I'm interested to see what they do with any kind of sort of invasion mechanics and them attacking your ship or anything, because I think that was definitely missing. Although they do have maybe a better story justification for not being able to hit up all of the different locations on the map now, but simultaneously I still don't like the fact that you can't do that. So there's some interesting stuff going on with it. It looks cool. We'll see where it goes. I do like the idea that you're playing sort of a ragtag kind of resistance movement with a bunch of hardened specialists. That's kind of neat. Might change the feeling around a little bit, but we'll see. No, I don't know. Can we expect more StarCraft 2 play streams, or do you still prefer Dota? Yeah. I mean, I do want to play more StarCraft 2. So with Dota, I'm going to be starting another Dota series up. I'm going to be working with Piri and Flax sometime in the next few weeks to put a few episodes together and see what people think, because I don't think the solo stuff works so well anymore. I think you need someone to banter off of, and he's higher skill than me, MMR-wise. He's like 500 MMR higher than I am. He's got a lot more experience in the game, but he's not like super good. Sorry, Pirian. Sorry. I mean, you'd say that, right? That's fair? We're not going to get the series anymore. He's too insulted. But he's good enough to sort of lead the duo, and we want a duo lane, and he play carry and I play support basically, and we just lane and complain. Essentially, that's probably the name of the series. So that's going to happen. For StarCraft 2, I do want to play it. I think it comes down like getting back from all of this stuff. Like, I've been really busy this month. I've got another event to go to, and once that's done, maybe I can settle down. Because obviously I still want to do some more tournaments as well. That hasn't happened yet because it's been impossible to schedule any. I've been trying. Like, we were supposed to do one last month, and there was no free weekend. None of them. It was impossible. Plus, getting the Kesper players while Pro League's still on is basically impossible. So we're waiting for the off-season to do some tournament stuff. Because I've got some really cool stuff planned. Okay. Oh, she's in the chat, so this is going to be awkward. Our Thin Immortal says, Jenna was awesome on the co-optional panel. Would she, or would you consider having her as Krendor 2.0 to fill in when you need a guest or replace Dodger and Jesse when they're not available? Would love to see more of on the show. I mean, I'm glad some people enjoyed that. Absolutely fine. That's great. You know, there's always a fear, I think, that there's going to be a weird dynamic if you have, like, your wife on the show. Because the way that we interact with each other on the shows that we do on her channel is very different to the way that we would interact in a four-person group. So there's always that fear that the dynamic is going to change too much as a result of that. But I'm glad that people enjoyed that. I think it will be cool to see how people respond to the panel that we did at CoxCon, because that was just me and her. So I'll certainly consider it, absolutely. I mean, there's times where it's just fine to do a three-person show. And obviously there's times when it's fine to have Krendor on. It's good to vary that up. I don't think you want the same guest on too many times. But yeah, if people responded well to it, I'd absolutely consider it. I'm always worried that I'd be too biased in that respect. Like, I don't really have the ability to make that decision myself because obviously she's married to me. So my perspective is going to be fundamentally different to the viewers. But yeah, I'm glad people dug that. It's also a case of just kind of getting the guest to speak as much. Because like, one thing I did notice on the panel is she doesn't speak as much as the rest of us, because I think we have that dynamic. We've been doing the show for years, so anyone that comes in from the outside kind of has to be super assertive. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, objection to it. Just making sure that this doesn't come up and hit me. Okay. This is a maths question. I can't answer that. Don't be silly. I have already answered that one. Not sure why we got that one the second time, but it happened. Given you live in the South and your love of airsoft and collectible firearms, have you given any thought to actual firearms or shooting for fun? We already shoot for fun. All right, we go to ranges and we shoot for fun that way. So, yeah, I mean, we already do that. If you're asking on my opinion on gun politics, that is not a good idea. But I'll probably cover it anyway. It's because, like, I'm in very much two minds about guns in this country. Like, I see the point of view from both sides, and it's a very heated topic that's really difficult to have a rational discussion on, because they're kind of both sides are kind of both right. You know, people who are really like anti-gun and people who are pro-gun, they're all correct in a way. It's like, yeah, guns don't kill people. People kill people. If they didn't have guns, they'd use something else. But then again, the opposing argument of, yeah, but guns kill people way more efficiently and in larger numbers is also true. But has, you know, banning large magazines and automatic weapons actually reduced the amount of mass shootings? That's a good question. I don't actually have the stats to hand. I don't know that. You know, in the UK, we had a ban on handguns after the Dunblane school massacre. And statistically, I believe that firearms deaths did go down as a result of that. Certainly, like, we haven't had... I don't think have we had any more mass shootings since then? Possibly not. I don't know. But America's a weird it's a really weird problem, because in America, you've got a lot of guns, but there's also a lot of other countries that have a lot of guns that don't have anywhere near as much gun crime. And every source on this seems to be biased, you know. You can watch Bowling for Columbine, and when I first watched that, I'm like, yeah, he makes a lot of sense. And then I do a bit more research, and I'm like, oh, this is agenda-driven. And he's maybe misrepresenting some things. But there's still some worthwhile opinions there. You know, and then I'll listen to, you know, I actually watch quite a few YouTube channels that do gun stuff. Because I like learning about... I'm fascinated by guns and the history of firearms and things like that. I think it's really interesting. And I'm interested to see how they shoot and all that sort of thing. And obviously those guys are very pro-gun, and sometimes they'll get on their high horse about, you know, how gun rights are important. And I'm like, yeah, you've got a point. But simultaneously, you're also biased. There's no easy answer to it. You know, there really is not. And I don't know really where my opinion lies on it. Honestly. I don't have a hardline opinion one way or the other. It's like, should people have the right to defend themselves? Yeah, sure. Do guns kill people? Well, in large numbers, yes. Is that the responsibility of the person firing the gun? Absolutely. Would that maybe have not happened if they hadn't had access to the guns? Yeah, probably. But there's also some aspects that I can absolutely agree with on a lot of people, which is, one, the way mass media covers shootings is awful and needs to stop, and is clearly, like, trackably, statistically encouraging more people to do that kind of thing. It's really irresponsible. And secondly, what was the other thing? Mental health is a huge issue. A massive issue that's got to be addressed. You know, if a lot of these shootings are due to poor mental health, I mean, one has to ask, how did they get the gun in the first place? One has to ask, you know, did anyone notice? You know, was this guy getting proper care for his mental health issue? Do we have a culture of simply just keeping it quiet? And the answer is we do. We do have a culture of keeping our mental health issues quiet. And then, of course, we now have the weird internet phenomenon of self-diagnosis and, like, mental illness also almost being trendy in some weird groups. You know, there's, like, that weird small subset of Tumblr that's like, oh, yeah, I diagnose myself in all these different ways and all that blah, blah, blah. It's almost like, what, you're collecting Pokemon? That's, do you really have these particular mental illnesses, or is this just, like, a way of making yourself feel special? And are you actually demeaning people that have real mental problems? Yeah, possibly. Yeah, it's entirely possible. You know, I've got some mental issues. I know that. You know, I've talked openly about it in the hope that it will make other people talk openly about it. It's the same with the cancer thing. It's the reason I decided to talk in such detail about it, because it's a very embarrassing subject for a lot of people, and they don't get it checked, and it kills people. It does. And as a result, some people got checked, and I know for a fact that some people managed to avert that. And hell, if even one person manages to avert getting it because I basically expose that information on the internet, then mission accomplished. Yeah. Anyway, that's that went off topic a bit. Yeah, guns are complicated, very complicated. But yes, I really enjoy shooting guns for fun, and I go to ranges to do that. And my favorite one was probably the I think I fired a Tech 9, or was it a Mac 10? I think it was a Mac 10. That was fun. Oh my god, I don't even understand how anyone controls that weapon. It's ridiculous. Okay, further down, Mr. Slowbeef, exploiting his mod status to ask a question. How dare he? This is a great question, though. What do you think of that Reddit thread where a developer says a YouTuber asked them for $22,000 to make a video about their game? Is this widespread or a one-off? It is widespread. That I can tell you for a fact. It is absolutely widespread. There are some channels that do it as a matter of course. As to what kind of channels, hard to say. There was a price list leaked a while back for promoting Minecraft servers. Like, it's not even just down to getting money from game developers for promoting the game. It actually went down to the fact that you're paying for Minecraft servers, and some of these were like $10,000. We'll promote your Minecraft server. And obviously there's a price list, and the smaller channels charge less, but a lot of channels were still charging to do it. My thoughts on it. Well, the amount of money sounds outlandish, but depending on the size of the channel, it's entirely possible that that would have been more than worth it. Like, it would have actually resulted in greater returns than what the financial outlay initially indicated. So if you spent $22,000, you might make $80,000 in sales back. It's smart marketing. But simultaneously, if this becomes too widespread, I'm very, very worried for a number of reasons. One, indies don't get a fair shake if that happens. Secondly, it really poisons the well, I think, and it sours the relationship between developers and YouTubers to the point where developers might start to maybe flex their legal muscles a little bit, might start to push the idea that, hey, this is our copyright work. You want to make money off this? Fuck you. And that's not what you want. There needs to be a cooperative relationship, I think, between people that create YouTube content and people that develop games. And for the most part, this is true. But there are some bad apples that I think really do cause problems for a lot of people that way. You know, there was that speculation on the running with rifles thread from the developer. It's like, I don't know if it would take money to do that. And I'm like, well, I don't. If a developer comes to us and say, we want to pay you X to make a video, I mean, we get that a lot, and we refuse. The only deals we really do are through Polaris, and therefore, like, tournament content. There's a very specific kind of content that I'm okay making, and most of the other stuff I'm not okay making. Because to me, it seems like, why why should it be that a developer could pay to take the spot of somebody who didn't? That seems... It's really hard because it's native advertising, which is really different to regular advertising. Like, let's say you went to a website and you paid for advertising on a site, and you get your banners and your overlays and all that stuff. Did you take away from the articles and the content that that site was creating and the amount of exposure that other games were getting? Well, no, you didn't, really. But when it comes to native advertising on YouTube, you can only put out a certain number of videos a day, so potentially a sponsored video could take away from a video that otherwise would have been created about an indie game. On the flip side, that sponsored video may very well enable you to create more content about smaller games, because that sponsored video was worth a ton of money. And I mean, they're worth a lot of money, you know, way, way more than regular ads would ever be worth. So you do one of those, that could set you up for a good long time, and it would allow you to create the content you want to make without a concern that it wouldn't get many views. And in that situation, what happens is some channels will look at smaller games because they feel free to do that, whereas if they weren't and they were scraping their pennies together, they would just cover the most successful stuff because it would get the most views. So it's very much a double-edged sword there. Is it widespread? Yes, it is. How widespread? Couldn't say, but I know it happens quite a bit, usually with some of the larger channels. As to who does it, couldn't say, really. It's, I think that it's a valid form of advertising if it's properly disclosed and done right. I think that when you start to kind of demand it, then that becomes a problem, because it's almost like you're shaking down developers and saying, well, we can cover you, but at a cost. The weird thing is, of course, that this is like, this happens in regular media as well. People pay for pages in magazines. People pay for appearances on talk shows and all that sort of thing. This happens. It was only a matter of time before it happened on YouTube. And in that one, again, I'm in two minds. Like, I don't have... My only solid position on the subject is this must be done right, and it must be properly disclosed. I don't think the channel should be doing it as a matter of course. I think that creates hostility. But simultaneously, they also understand that their audience has value. And if you're running a business, it's only fair to be able to leverage the amount of power you have, the audience that you built. It just depends how you leverage it and how frequently you leverage it. I think I've definitely spoken about it before. I think I spoke about it when we were talking about the Yogg Discovery thing. I talked a lot about it then. I think my opinion hasn't really changed since that. It's like, I see why this is okay, but simultaneously I see it potentially becoming a problem. Okay, moving on. Sir Bruceable, would you be someone's best friend if they gave you a packet of chocolate hobnobs? I wouldn't trust them. I wouldn't trust anybody that gave me a packet of chocolate hobnobs. Who knows where they've been? They're great, though. One of my favorite biscuits, absolutely. Although I've really, like, stopped eating chocolate since I got, like, the reversal operation. Like, I've had a few issues with digestion and things like that, so one of the things that I cut out of my diet was a lot of chocolate, which is good, because I'm losing weight. That's a good thing. It's not like chocolate's good for you, so let's make sure that we don't do any of that. Lemming Russ, simple question to start with. Do you have an all-time favorite game soundtrack? If so, what is it? I do. I do. I wonder if I've actually... I may not even have it on my playlist here. And it is Guardian Heroes is my favorite soundtrack. I'll play you a song during the break, because I'll be able to easily find it on YouTube. Guardian Heroes has this amazing soundtrack, which is kind of weird funk electro jazz. It's so good. It's so fucking good. So that's probably my personal favorite out of everybody. I think, like, there's definitely a lot of very close runners-up. Total Annihilation is amazing. Morrowind and Oblivion is amazing. I really enjoy listening to those. I obviously like listening to the Bastion and Transistor soundtracks a lot. And I'm listening a lot lately to Guilty Gear Xrd soundtrack, because that's so good. I listened a lot to BlazBlue and Guilty Gear music over the past few years. The latest soundtrack is maybe the best one they've ever done. So, yeah, but my favorite all-time game soundtrack is to Guardian Heroes on the Sega Saturn, and I'll play some of the music during the break, since we're approaching that. Alright, quick question. WTF Oliver. Kyle Bossman for Co-optional. Will Lounge return soon at all? We've already talked about Lounge. Kyle Bossman for Co-optional. We've done it before. I'd happily welcome him back on the show. It was great. I love his work. I watch his Final Bossman stuff on a weekly basis. It's really interesting. Suddenly Baneblades asks me, when did you decide to fail the Emperor, our Lord Savior, and went heretic? The false Emperor, you mean? Bollocks. I got sick of Space Marines. I really did. Like, it was, everyone was playing Space Marines, so I'm like, I should I like the idea of Space Marines, but I want them to be interesting, so I played Chaos. Simple as that. Plus, Chaos Lore is really, really entertaining. The weird thing about the 40k universe is there really aren't any good guys, per se. Even the goody good guys, like the Tau, are still not really that. Like, their whole for the greater good thing is still pretty damn authoritarian and evil in many ways. And obviously the Imperium is the good guys, but they're really not. Like, they're oppressive, they're awful, they're a theocracy, like, they're brutal. No one's really good in that universe, so I'm like, well, screw it. Nobody's really good. I'll play Chaos, you know? At least they're certain about what they want. Okay. Where do you see YouTubers in 6 months if the CPM rates continue to be so low, says Hippie80? Well, they're starting to recover. And I see exactly what I thought would happen, which is they're just going to do more brand deals. It's as simple as that. Some will start a Patreon, although I think there's an expectation if you run a Patreon that you also don't run ads on your channel. So it's kind of like an either-or for the most part. I think what Jim does is... I think he runs ads on some stuff, but he doesn't run it on Jimquisition. I think he runs ads on his regular stuff. And I think his deal with his patrons is like... It's ad-free. For this stuff, you're supporting this content, everything else is extra. I'm like, okay, cool, that works. So I definitely see, obviously, more people will start to use Patreon. In my experience, up to this point, the YouTube fan funding hasn't been that successful, but you got to bear in mind that we had ours enabled and we just never promoted it. Because I'm not really okay with actively asking people for money like that. Like, if I ask people for money, I want it to be for something. Like, a shirt. Down there, 955 the Weasel. There you go. Or... subscription to Twitch, because it adds tangible benefits. It has real stuff. So maybe that's why. I don't actually know of anybody that's done really well off fan funding, but then again, it's not something we really discuss a lot. I should probably ask, like in the YouTube channel, is anyone actually doing well as a result of fan funding? But yeah, it'll be more brand deal stuff. That's the best thing they can do. Like, if you take a couple of good brand deals, that can often replace a month's worth of content if it's a really good deal. Sponsorships as well is an obvious thing. Like, the sponsorships for the podcast have been really successful, and they've helped us, like, pay Jesse and Dodger a good amount of money for doing it as well. Because they used to be paid a small appearance fee by Polaris. Now they get paid a lot more through our sponsorships, so everyone's kind of a winner there. So I expect some people will definitely take the sponsorships. I know that some already have, like, Audible and Crunchyroll and Squarespace are very active in doing sponsorships at the moment, and now there's a lot of other companies that are looking into it. Some people are doing things like G2A referral schemes. Obviously, like, I'm not really okay with that because you know my stance on G2A. But I see why people do it because they get a small cut and everything like that. So yeah, they'll look for alternative ways to fund. Though, as I said, the ad market is kind of recovering. Like, it's not quite as good as it was before Christmas, but it's getting back to that point. So, the ad industry always works this way, ultimately. There's always dips, so you just have to ride it out. Rerun1219 says, what are some of your favorite bands? I cover this one a lot, don't I? But I think, obviously at the moment, I'm listening to a lot of Maiden. I've loved Maiden for a long fucking time. A long time. But Maiden, Soilwork. Who else do I really, really like? A lot of power metal bands, a lot of good cheese. Do enjoy that. Still enjoy listening to things like Rhapsody of Fire and so on and so forth. Fintroll, Encephalum, Corpaclani, all that kind of thing. I listen to less metal these days, mostly because I like to listen to stuff I can actually play on my stream without getting a copyright strike, so I listen to a lot of OC Remix and video game soundtracks as a result of that. And every now and again, though, I'll go and listen to some metal, but yeah. I mean, if you want to find some of my favorite bands, I've done some playlists of some of that, like melodic death metal. I did a playlist of my favorite female-fronted metal bands, and I did a playlist of music to get pumped up to in the morning, which is like the really intense stuff that I like a lot. So go check those out. They're all on my Spotify. Okay. Moving on. Zamalin says, do you know what happened to Slanik and Kiki Jiki from the WoW Radio days? I believe Slanik just had a kid, actually. So, yeah, I keep in touch with Slanik over Facebook and Kiki over Facebook as well. I mean, they're not really involved in this stuff anymore. You know, they're not really involved in this industry. So we kind of fell out of communication as a result. But yeah, I think Kiki's working a real job. You know, he did a bunch of program stuff. I'm not sure what Slanik's doing for work at the moment, but I know he just had a kid. So, yep, they're getting on. You know, I keep in touch with a lot of the WoW Radio guys, not all of them, because some of them we parted on not so friendly terms, unfortunately. The big split was, you know, there was kind of 3 groups in WoW Radio that all kind of wanted to do different things, and there was this one group that had never really gotten along with me and sort of the management too well. So they ended up going off and doing something else there, and we don't keep in touch with them, but I still keep in touch with Gnomewise and all the guys over at Alpha Geek and the stuff at VTW, those guys. So I keep in touch with them. We're still friends. Okay. Huh. Haikido64, can you talk on the subject of the future of Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive? I'm interested in hearing your opinions on it, where it's going. I still think VR is probably the way things are going to go. I don't know how long it's going to take to get there, but I actually got a chance to use the Oculus Rift again very recently when I was in Newcastle. I was at home, and we went to take a Ryan to the Center for Life, and they had the Game 2.0 exhibition. And we got to try the Oculus Rift there, and it was a better version than the one that I'd used at PAX a couple of years back. And it was really good. Like, it didn't have the focus problems. The sense of motion was incredible. I actually, I demanded that, because my parents came with me, obviously, because they want to spend a lot of time with Orion, so they came as well. And I was like, you should try this. My dad lasted about 10 seconds before, like, nope, can't deal with this. And my mom was kind of the same. It's like, this is too much. Like, it's sensory overload. Like, they'd never experienced anything like it. And now, that was how I was as well. You know, I'd never experienced anything like it. I think it's got real utility for a lot of different kinds of games. The game we were playing was kind of a futuristic racing game when you're in a cockpit. That's the one that works best. I think it's going to be a real challenge to make it work properly for things like first-person shooters and open-world adventures and things like third-person games. I don't see that working very well at all, but stuff like mech games, racing games, space games, that sort of thing, it's incredible. I will absolutely buy one when one's available for my personal experience. I actually tried playing a little bit of Mad Max in first person from driving. That game looks fucking good in first person. That would be amazing with Oculus Rift. I would love that. There's definitely going to be a market for it, no question about that. The question is, how much is it going to cost, and how many developers are truly going to support it, and is it going to be used in a gimmicky way like 3D was? It would be a shame, because I played a few games in 3D, and some of them are really good. I played, if you play Wipeout on PS3 with the 3D, the sense of motion is amazing. I played MotorStorm with that as well. I also played Killzone with it. That was a bit weird. It wasn't so good with the FPS bits, but it was really good when you're in the mech. So I think it has limited viability, but the viability it does have is really cool. So we might see people developing games around that idea. Plus, there's all sorts of genres we haven't even thought about yet. Using the Oculus Rift to provide some sort of asymmetrical experience. Like, there was the bomb defusal game that they were doing at PAX, I think, where someone had to read off the instructions and someone with the headset on was doing the bomb defusal. I think there's all sorts of interesting things you could do with that. Okay, I've answered this one, but I haven't answered the rest of it, so we will answer that. Also, have you thought about speaking publicly at college campuses before? You know, it's weird that you should say that, because it's something that Jen talked to me about, like, last week. It's like, have you thought about doing it? I guess I'm a bit gun-shy on it, because the only real talk that I did was, like, a long time ago, and, like, I look back at that talk and, like, this is... I don't know, I think it was based on the information we had at the time, which is like the WoW addiction thing. At the time, it wasn't really recognized as a proper medical condition. I think, like, since then, the fields of psychology and psychiatry have evolved somewhat, and they've advanced, and there is a degree of recognition there. So, like, a lot of what I said seems really ignorant, but then again, like, it was almost 10 years ago, so I guess I shouldn't really beat myself up over that. I don't know what I'd speak on. I think there's probably some things that I could say about social media, and maybe cyberbullying and things like that, and also, of course, about new media and basically how to act online, essentially. And you might be saying, well, you don't know how to act online. It's like, well, I do. The problem is I know how, I just don't. You know, there's the difference between the emotional side of me and the rational side of me. The rational side of me knows what he's fucking doing. The emotional side of me flies off the handle. You know, it's a similar situation to, like, having someone come in to talk about drugs who has, like, abused drugs. You might be saying, well, that's hypocritical. No, I mean, they're often the people that know the best, because they can tell you about those experiences. Maybe. I don't know. It's like, what use would I be? You know, I do videos on the internet. That's not a viable career for most people. And the last thing I want to do is give people the impression that it is, because a lot of our success comes down to luck. So, yeah. Early thoughts on the gameplay video that was released for Battlefleet Gothic. If I've seen it, I saw a little bit of it. That's by B. Cadogan, whatever. I'm really excited. And that's dangerous, because it'll probably suck. I hope it doesn't. I loved the idea of Battlefleet Gothic for ages. I used to play it. I remember we got a White Dwarf when they first published the new rules for it. They gave you a set of it in cardboard, like cardboard cutouts, and I played it with my brother at the time. And we had a whale of a time with it. It was great. I love the idea of tall ships in space. That's why I really enjoy games like Starfleet Command and Nexus. And what's another game that does that? I wouldn't say Homeworld. Too many fighters in that. Like, the idea of, like, sort of capital ship combat to me is really cool and interesting. And Battlefleet Gothic, obviously with 40k stuff, could be really cool. We'll see. Hopefully it'll not suck. That would be nice. I'd like to play that. Regarding the indie video, how do you see the market today compared to 90s demo disc and shareware scene? Haven't we just gotten back to the amount of saturation we had back then? It's from K-Shade. No, the saturation's got a lot worse because of the internet. Back then, getting like a shareware disc, when you mostly had to get a disc, meant that there was a limit, there's a finite amount of distribution that could happen. A lot of those shareware games you get like on the front of a magazine or something like that. That was the way that they were distributed. And then the internet came around and it opened things up and self-publishing came around. There's obviously more people developing games now than there were then. I think there's not really a doubt about that. Because game development has gotten easier. Because there are engines that are a lot easier to use with better licenses. There are pieces of software like Game Maker. And good games have been made in Game Maker. Absolutely. No doubt. It wasn't the first version of Dust Force made in that, and I know Game Maker was a thing for Gunpoint as well. There's been some good games made in that. So, I don't think it's the same situation. I do genuinely think there are certainly more games being developed now, but I think, like, the last 10 years or so, there hasn't been a great deal of change. It's just that these games have been in different places, but they've been on the internet. That's the key component. They've been on the internet, which gives them simultaneously access to a potentially unlimited audience, but it also means they're in competition with everything else that's on the internet, which means there's a huge amount of it, and it's very easy to be lost in the crowd. I mean, hell, back then, if you were on a demo disc, that could be a huge deal, and people vied to get on those demo discs. And shareware as well. I don't think that's really the case anymore. You know, demo discs don't really exist. Will you be doing a show where you build a house in Fallout 4 like you and Jenna did in Sims 4? That's from Pythagoras. I hadn't really considered that. Probably not. The Sims is funny because of all of the random sort of real-life stuff that can happen. I think there's a lot more comedy there. I don't think I'll build... In Fallout 4, you've got to, like, go and gather the resources and shit. I don't think it would really work. You know, with Sims 4, it's more of a sandbox more so than anything else, so you can build things really quickly. I don't think us going out and gathering resources in a single-player game and then building a random house is really all that interesting. It's not my kind of thing. You know, builds, that sort of very Minecraft-y sort of thing. That's not... I'm not really into that. I just don't do that kind of thing. Cloudy Tex, how much StarCraft content can we expect before and after Legacy comes out? I don't want to make promises on that, honestly. And, you know, I'd like to say there's going to be a lot, but I don't know. You know, I want to do these tournaments, and I'd love to do a little bit more I Suck at StarCraft. At the moment, like, the beta's changing so much that it's a really weird situation because they're changing huge parts of the game. So it kind of makes more sense to wait until the game comes out, because all the stuff that I would learn, I might have to unlearn after that, and I don't have the bloody time otherwise. So, there will be some. You know, I still want to do StarCraft stuff. I just don't know how much there will be. Moving on up. Favorite Hearthstone card, cover my 62 is the name of the guy with that question. Ew. Favorite one. I'm really liking Murloc Knight at the moment. That's funny. I like cards that can have really weird results. They're awesome. And I sort of sit on the side of people that are okay with the amount of RNG that game has. There's a real split right now with Hearthstone for the people that care about the competitive side of things and the people that don't. And as a result, we're seeing people who are okay with high variance cards and people that want that variance to be lowered because it affects the competitive scene. Like, there was a recent tournament that was apparently basically decided by RNG for all intents and purposes. It was a really extreme case. I think Trump ended up losing. So I think a lot of people complain because of that, because Trump's very popular. So when this happens to a popular person, there's more outrage. But I do like those moments. But then again, I view that card game as like a source of entertainment, a source of very light entertainment, something I don't really get too frustrated with. And for my videos, I try to make lighter videos that aren't really competitive and that hopefully have fun moments in them. So I like the high variance stuff as a result, because it could lead to some really cool outcomes. But I understand a lot of people don't. So outside of that, what are the favorite ones? What do I really like? What's good and random and weird? It's like, what's my favorite legendary? It's like, there's a lot of legendaries I like and that are really good, but the ones that are really fun, you know, like Gelbin Mechatork is pretty awesome. That's not so much random. No, is that Mechanier Thermoplug? Goddamn, I keep getting mixed up. It's Gelbin, isn't it? Gelbin's the 6/6 with the summon a random invention. Mechatork is the 9-drop, isn't it? I like Gelbin a lot because he can do all sorts of weird stuff. And I think, though, after all of that, Lore Walker Cho still fucks up so much stuff that Lore Walker Cho is still so much fun to play. Because it really screws people over. When you play it, they have no idea what to do. It's great. Okay, I'll do one more, and then I'm going to take a break, and then I'll come back and answer some more questions. Okay. Where are we there? There we go. What is your current opinion on where Heart of the Void stands? I think you mean Legacy of the Void. In the current meta for StarCraft leagues. Right now, it's in such a state of flux that it's really awkward to play tournaments with it. Like, I think our Terrans... I'd say kind of our Terrans got screwed by the changes, but simultaneously, QXC and Beastie QT succeeded where the Korean Terran teams failed at Battlegrounds. So that indicates to me that our guys just didn't, like, they didn't get the hang of it. Yeah, it sucks to have a big change before a big tournament. It's happened to us before. We've got screwed on it on multiple occasions. Like, the Swarm Host nerf came right before, like, literally hours before our GSL match, where we'd prepared Swarm Hosts against a mech player, and then it ended up being the case that they said it would be on the previous patch, and it ended up being on the current patch. So our strategy was useless, and we lost. And that really sucks from a professional standpoint. That really hurt us. But still, if you're going to play beta tournaments, you've got to expect this kind of thing. And the meta's all over the place right now, and the changes are very strange, and there's a lot of conflict and maybe a lot of lack of confidence when it comes to the community versus the developers. Like, they're not confident the devs know what they're doing right now. And that's understandable. I'm not necessarily confident of that either. Maybe they don't, but I'm glad they're trying these things. I think some of the changes are good here. I was in two minds about the macro change, but I think, like, overall, the macro change did not hurt the quality of games at Battlegrounds. In fact, the quality of games at Battlegrounds were really, really good. So I think that kind of proved what I thought, which is, look, the game is beautiful when you look at every aspect of it, but I think if you're able to free up some APM to do cool micro, it's much more fun to watch than appreciating amazing macro. You can still appreciate that, but I think the majority of people like great army control, and you get a lot of that through there. But yeah, it's in a real state of flux. Am I concerned about Legacy of the Void? Absolutely. Totally. You know, why wouldn't I be? You know, it's going to determine the future of our team, if our team even has a future at that point, you know? I think a lot of teams are going to end up closing down. A lot of teams are going to end up retiring. So it's very important that last expansion is really, really good. But it's hard to say where it's going right now because it keeps changing. I'm going to have to do... you know, I did a bunch of research for the tournament. Obviously, I watched a bunch of games to learn the builds, and now the builds might not even be the same. So I'm like, yeah, I'm commentating. What's he going to do? I don't know, because they keep changing the game. All right. Okay, I promised you some music from Guardian Heroes. I'm going to go find some for you. So let me just do that. Here we go. Guardian Heroes, where are you? I'm sure I had that soundtrack. I don't know where I put it. Let's find the OST. I'm not sure which of these is the best one. I can't remember exactly. But I'm sure I can come up with something. Yeah, we'll go with that. Okay, here's some music from Guardian Heroes. I'm going to take a break. And when I come back, we'll do a little bit more Q&A. There you go. Some Guardian Hero stuff. I'll play a little bit more later. You know, maybe I'm thinking after that, it's like, is the appeal just to me? I don't know. I liked it because it was very madcap. And all the stuff that was going on the screen was absolutely crazy. So maybe it fit with that. There's another track called Tokimeki Saxophone that I might have to play after that. All right, let's go back to the background music, shall we? A little bit of Earthbound will do the job quite nicely. Very cool. That is not what I want to show you at all. It's like, hi, look, some YouTube recommendations. There we go. Back to the questions. Wonderful. All right. Let's get back to where we were previously. She's trying to attack me with a flower. I don't know why this is.
It's pretty.
It is a weed. Ow!
You bought it for me.
I have terrible taste, what can I say?
You bought me weeds.
Yeah, some people would be happy if I said I bought you weed, but, you know, never mind. Alright, let's get back to it, shall we? That was our next question. Ah, here we go. Yes, here we go. Ah, the controversial one, yes. I've been thinking about this one for a while. So this is from Lost Endgame. It says, what do you think of Smite being on Steam now and Hi-Rez renewing their support of Tribes? Once bitten, twice shy, actually, is what I think on that. I love Tribes, you know? I even did a voice pack for them. I didn't get paid for that, by the way. I just did it because I liked the game. I learned a valuable lesson from that. Don't do that. Don't do that thing. And then, of course, they discontinued support for the game. So that reflected pretty badly on me, and it pissed me off because I loved the game, and you know, from a business standpoint, I understand why they did it, but simultaneously one has to wonder, like, if some of their decisions up to that point are what caused the lack of support in the first place. Yeah, there were a lot of issues with that game. You know, there's the pay-to-win issue of, like, they released several things that were blatantly overpowered, and people told them were overpowered on the public test ROM. They put them out anyway, and then they nerfed them after people had bought them, so that was pretty annoying. They had issues with progression. They didn't have a proper spectator system, so the esports scene never really took off. They were focusing on things, perhaps, that were not as important. A lot of people also complained about the number of bullet weapons in that game. I personally didn't have a problem with that, but you're never going to be able to make a Tribes game that makes everybody happy because, you know, the last Tribes came out a long-ass time ago. We don't talk about Vengeance. We talk about Tribes 2. And is there a scene for that still? Maybe? I mean, Tribes did okay. Tribes Ascend did okay, but people blame its lack of super success on a lot of different factors. And I think there's more than just it was Hi-Rez's fault. Hi-Rez made some decisions that I don't agree with. Yeah. They did some things which were really dumb. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. But you've also got to wonder, would a game like that have ever had a really huge player base? Like, is that the sort of game that can succeed these days? You know, that game had a hell of a learning curve on it. So one has to wonder. I mean, I might try it again. I'm a little bit suspicious. I don't know what they've done with the business model. I think if they've improved the business model, then maybe it's worth going back to. Obviously, like, I have everything on that because I got, like, tons of referrals. But still, I have to wonder. Smite being on Steam is logical, you know. It's like, you have a successful game, why not put it on Steam? And the only reason you wouldn't do that is because I'm pretty sure Steam takes a cut of microtransactions, which I think might be why really big free-to-play games like League aren't on Steam. Because they don't want to give a certain percentage to Steam. Why would they need to? They're too successful. Why would they give money away for no reason? But I think with games like Smite, yeah, sure, they can benefit from being on Steam. Absolutely. So that's pretty good. We'll see where they go with Tribes. I'm hesitant to cover it again after the stuff that went down with it. Okay. Gamer GITP. I remember back in 2012-ish, during the start of the Kickstarter craze, he said one of your big hopes was that it would get big publishers to pay attention to niche genres like CRPGs and flight sims. 3 years later, there's no indication of anything like that. Most of these games still rely on crowdfunding. Do you think it's possible big publishers will ever take notice of these genres again? Possible? Sure. You know, what's interesting about it is that they might end up paying attention to those genres again if the current budget issue with games becomes unsustainable. Remember what I was saying about Tomb Raider? It's like, well, if you sell 6 million copies and you're still not happy with the game's performance, then frankly, it seems like you spent too much and you messed up somewhere when it comes to your finances. I have to wonder if that's happening more than we might think, and if these large budgets are becoming a problem. And the thing is about, like, CRPGs and things like that, and they can be made on a smaller budget, and they can still have a ton of content, so one has to wonder if a big publisher sees that. It's like, hey, Wasteland 2 and Pillars of Eternity and Divinity, they all did really well, and they didn't cost that much relative to what we are spending on latest 6-hour cinematic action experience. Maybe it's worth doing that again. I think the problem is that those games really only do well on PC, so you run into the problem where these publishers want a multi-format release and they can't really do it because playing a game like Pillars of Eternity without a mouse is most likely a nightmare. It might happen, although it might just be still a crowdfunding thing. You know, crowdfunding still seems to be working for some games. Not all, but some. So maybe that's just the way they're made, or maybe we get into a situation where those companies can become self-sustaining. The problem we have with games like Divinity, even though it did really well, they still need to go back to Kickstarter again because their Kickstarter budget was only a fraction of what they actually spent on it. So they don't have any money anymore, so they need to go back to Kickstarter to do it again. If we end up in a cycle like that, that can become a problem because fatigue will end up setting in. If eventually a game becomes so successful that they're able to fund their own stuff, then that's like the great end goal, isn't it? But we're not seeing a lot of evidence that that's happening right now. Mucker1916, any thoughts on the new Apple hardware announced? No, I don't care. I really don't. Bigger iPad. Pencil. What? I don't know. It's like, control more stuff with your voice. No, we don't want that. That's terrible. Please no. I don't care. And a follow-up question, what do you think about the new Apple TV? Will it be a new big thing for the games industry? I don't think so. I mean, how many micro consoles have we already had? The problem is that even when you have a big library of stuff on the App Store, the kind of thing that would work on an Apple TV is completely different to what would work on a touchscreen. So even though you have loads of games already and an installed user base, it doesn't matter because most of those games won't work well on a television with a controller. So, I mean, I think it's just going to go down the same micro console route in that it's just not going to do very well. People don't seem to care. People don't... The problem is that a lot of the games that you play on micro consoles and things like that are just worse versions of things you can get on regular consoles. Whereas the demographic for an iPad is often different. Like, they're after different kinds of games. They're not after a console-like experience because they're playing completely different genres. But on a micro console, you really need to have a console-like experience with the controller, because those genres work well with the controller. But you can't do it because you don't have the power. So really, you're paying money for crappier versions of things. Like, a good example was Shadow Gun, which is a Gears ripoff, I think, by Gameloft. Is that anywhere near as good as Gears of War? No, not even close. The only reason why it sold okay was because you didn't get an experience like that on an iPad. The problem was with the console, you've got loads of experiences like that. There's the problem. There's the problem. So, I don't see it doing that well at all. But then again, I could be completely mistaken. I just don't think this whole micro console thing is going to work out. What's your favorite JRPG? Asks Duzapindon. And why is it the original Grandia? It's not the original Grandia. I've never played the original Grandia. I played Grandia 2. My favorite JRPG is Dragon Quest VIII, because it's one of the only ones I actually freaking finished. That game's great. Great sense of humor, awesome voice acting, awesome score, great soundtrack. Still holds up to this day. Good challenge, lots of collectibles, cool side quests and minigames, things like that. Yeah, Dragon Quest VIII is awesome. That's my favorite JRPG by a country mile. And then I suppose if you can count Persona 4, but do you even count that as a JRPG at this point? I don't know. Is there anything you do for fun that you don't talk about that much? Swimming? Yes. Not really, you know. I do the same sort of things that most people do, which is watch movies and watch wrestling. And I talk about wrestling quite a lot. Play some board games. I talk about those. I mean, I guess going out to eat, if that can even count as doing something for fun. Something like that. I slow cook. I'm making a stew right now, which I actually haven't checked on. Jen needs to go check on the stew. Stir the stew. It's been there for hours. Needs stirring. Not really. And I think, honestly, like, there needs to be something. Like, I think that having something that just wasn't in any way connected to what we do for a job is probably healthy. We don't do anywhere near enough of that. Slow Beef, once again, what is the proper time for a makeout session with Quiet from... Oh, my God. That's not even a question. But, shall I dive in? You're baiting me, aren't you? You're baiting me onto the Quiet thing. I'll say a little bit about the Quiet thing, because, again, I don't have a fully solid opinion on it. Metal Gear's weird. Metal Gear has been weird for a long time. A lot of the things that are considered sort of standard in Metal Gear are not in any other genre. They have a very weird way of betraying almost everybody. Am I going to deny that they sexualize females in that game? Yes. Do they sexualize some males? Yes, they do. Absolutely. I mean, Raiden is just a huge example of that. Simultaneously, it's the weird situation of it being Japanese developed and also Hideo Kojima developed and being Metal Gear. So, I think that people have kind of come to accept whatever ridiculous plot explanation backs up a particular aesthetic choice. When it comes to Quiet, it's like, oh, well, damn it, I can't talk about that because it's a spoiler. Damn. Yeah, there is an in-game reason for her to be dressed like that. But simultaneously, I think, like, that reason isn't a strong reason. It's not a great reason. I think that I'm going to be honest here. Maybe this is going to offend... Everything I say is going to offend people. Who fucking cares at this point? Do you need a reason to put a sexy character in a game? Is having a sexy character really that bad? I mean, are we that puritanical? Are we that sex negative. That's like, oh god, no, not sexy stuff. We're okay with blowing people's heads off, but God forbid we see a bit of cleavage. I mean, I've never really viewed that as a big deal. I think the main problem is that there's too much of it relative, at least in the past anyway. I think this is getting a lot better, but there's so much of it relative to how many well-developed female characters are in games that becomes the problem. It's like, oh, if you're including female just as an eye candy piece, and you're then not including like someone who's well-developed and a good character, then yeah, you could definitely have a representation problem there. But I don't think that developers should have to make an excuse for putting a sexy character in a game. And I've got no problem with them putting sexy males in a game. But then again, some of the demographic might. You know, some people might feel uncomfortable. And as a result, you've then got to think from, you know, some girl gamer's perspective. Do they feel uncomfortable as a result of having sexy characters in games that are female only? Very well, they might. Some people, I think, appreciate it. And some people don't. But I think ultimately making excuses for that sort of thing is kind of silly. Like, just put what you want in your game and let the market decide what they want to buy and what they don't want to buy. I don't think that people should be shamed for putting sexy characters in games. I don't think that gamers should be shamed for liking sexy characters. That's completely natural. There's nothing. This idea of being attracted to something being unnatural is just ridiculous. Yeah, this character's supposed to look attractive. Okay, cool. So? Where's the big deal there? Oh, are we getting lightning again? God damn it. Every time I go on the stream, we get a bloody storm. Don't contrive a reason for it. Just design your characters in the way that you want to, and then the market's going to decide what they find acceptable and what they don't. You know, and just be creative. Don't do something to pander, like, from either side of things. You know, don't create sexy characters to pander to horny teenagers, but simultaneously, you know, don't create certain other kinds of characters to pander to other demographics. Just have, like, integrity in your vision, I think, is probably the best thing that I can say about that. That's not your question at all, but your question was dumb, so... we get upset about a lot of things that maybe are not worth getting upset over. Flario X, or whatever it is. How is everything with Axiom, and do you have future plans for StarCraft 2? I mean, I'm going to be honest, like, things with Axiom are pretty rough at the moment. You know, we've lost a lot of tournaments. We're finding difficulty finding our place, I think, at the moment. Right now, we're the only non-Kesper team in Korea. We're the only team in Korea that hasn't disbanded, that is not part of Pro League. And not being part of Pro League is a huge disadvantage. With WCS, we can't have our guys play there anymore. So we're in a really difficult spot. You know, it's hard to recruit because there are no players to recruit. There's no free agents that are really available. And it sounds like Kesper teams probably aren't going to be dropping too many players at the end of the season because apparently they need practice partners. Like, even the Kesper teams are struggling for good B-teamers and things like that to actually practice against. So, like, it's really hard. You got to bring fresh blood into the team to invigorate everybody, but there's no fresh blood to bring in. You can't just tell people, hey, get better and win more tournaments. It doesn't work that way. You know, they're trying. So, yeah, it's really difficult right now. Very difficult. I don't see a solution to it at the moment, which is a shame. But we'll see, you know. We'll see what happens in the next few months. We've still got sponsorship till the end of the year, so we'll see where it goes from there. Okay, let's have this on the screen. Advance Wars Days of Ruin, Dark Conflict, or Advance Wars Dual Strike? They're both really good. I like the aesthetic and the soundtrack of Days of Ruin better, though. Dual Strike's really cool, has more interesting mechanics, I think, than Days of Ruin. Days of Ruin has a much better soundtrack, much better aesthetic. They're both really, really good, and you should play both of them. Orby, 1983, have you ever got invited onto Friend Zone? Yes. Would I go there? Well, the thing is, it's in LA. I'm not going to fly out for that. Fucking Kigarumi nonsense. It's a good show. It's just not my style, ultimately. Next question. Oh, man. Here we go. This is going to happen. On a scale of 1 to 10, how done are you with Reddit? Seems you're suffering from the same thing that caused you to turn YouTube comments off. Are you considering a more moderated form of communication with fans, like a forum or something like that? It's from P440. The main problem is me, ultimately. I said this years ago, and it's still true now. You know, when I last quit Reddit, like, it was the same thing. It's like, I can't deal with this. I can't handle this. I don't know what it is about Reddit more so than anything else. I really do think it's, like, down to the system that Reddit uses, the kind of upvote, downvote kind of thing. It's very difficult to see an individual comment as just the opinion of an individual rather than an opinion of a mob because of upvoting. Like, if a comment has, like, 400 upvotes, that means that 400 other people supported it. Probably more than that, because a bunch of people also downvoted it. So you're like, wow, this isn't just the opinion of one person. This is the opinion of, like, shitloads of people. Like, a kind of silent mob. And it's much, much harder to say to yourself, this is just a comment from one person because of that system. I just shouldn't be on there. Like, until I get my head sorted out, I shouldn't be on there. It's, you know, I end up just harming people. I make people upset. I make myself upset. I make the people on my subreddit upset. No one's winning. No one's benefiting from that. It sounds childish, but like as I said in my SoundCloud earlier, you know, it's a real mental problem for me. It's a compulsion. It's not just a case of just don't go there. It's like, yeah, that doesn't work. You know, it's almost like saying, I don't want to compare it to like alcohol or anything like that, because there's obviously a chemical addiction element there. But let's just say there wasn't a chemical addiction element there for a second. It's like, oh, just stop drinking alcohol. You say that to an alcoholic. It's like, yeah, but I can't. And then someone can't really understand it. It's like, but I have no problem with that. Yeah, but I do. You know, it's weird and stupid, and I know a lot of people like don't take it seriously, and I don't blame you for that. But it's best that I stay away from that. As for fan interaction, I've never been big on that in the first place, and I understand that like a lot of YouTubers are, but I don't deal well with it, you know? I don't know how best to do it. I don't have a solution. Maybe I will in a few months after, you know, plenty more therapy sessions or whatever. I don't know. No. What shouldn't be happening is that an interaction between me and the viewers turns into a big negative. How that ends up happening, probably my fault for the most part. I don't know. I don't have an answer, I'm afraid. Okay, next question. Have you and Jen made any progress in the Age of Sigmar set? No, haven't got around to it. Jen's waiting for her spray compressor to come in, so yeah. Bloody hell. Don't know what it is about storms in this area. Drunken Valley says, I'm just going to go ahead and ask if there's going to be a WTF is of Mad Max or Metal Gear Solid 5. There'll definitely be a Mad Max one. I'm still working on that. For Metal Gear Solid, I don't know. Like, it's a really big game, and it's not even a genre that I'm that into. At some point, maybe. I can't guarantee when, though. Mad Max definitely will happen, but Metal Gear Solid 5, I'm not so sure. How are all the pets doing? Asks Starstar. The dog keeps peeing on the damn floor. It sucks. We think it's marking its territory and it needs to stop it. I'm getting sick of wiping it up all the time. Gone through how many mops? And they're doing fine for the most part. Like, I love them to death, but they need to stop peeing on the kitchen floor. Fuck. The weird thing is they never used to do that. I think it's since the cats came, they're like marking territory or some shit. And it's really annoying. So yeah, that's not great. Please stop. If the dogs are listening to this show, can you stop pissing on the floor? Thank you. Warkeel says, have you ever seen Wasp live? No, I haven't. I don't listen to Wasp, I'm afraid. Nintendo time. Hokkaido64 asks, what do you think about Nintendo pulling all the videos for tool-assisted speedruns? I think Nintendo are fucking idiots. Like, if we look at it from this perspective, right? It's a shitty perspective. You could argue, from Nintendo's point of view, that a lot of that stuff is being done on an emulator, especially if it's tool-assisted, which is, in some countries, not legal. It's piracy. Now, bear in mind, that's not true across the world. There are plenty of countries where making a backup for your own purposes and emulation is legal. Yeah? That's legal. ROM creation is not necessarily legal in some places. I don't know what the law is in America, I'm going to be honest. I'd have to look it up. I think there's some weird stuff with that with the DMCA. But here's the thing. Even if it is, what fucking harm is it doing? What harm is it doing? It's like, oh no, the sales of Super Mario Bros. 2 are down the toilet now. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. Essentially what YouTube are doing here, which Nintendo are doing, which they've done repeatedly, and I don't get why people aren't more upset about it. They repeatedly take their fan creations and they piss all over them. You know, for the community that's supposed to be for the fans, they are one of the worst companies that exist when it comes to that. They are awful when it comes to fan-created content. You know, running their own system where it's like the only way you can monetize is if you give us 50% is bollocks. No other company does this. It's extortionately bad. And you might say, well, you don't have the right to make the money from this. Yeah, but you've got to look at the culture right now. Is everybody doing it? Yes. Are the vast majority of companies okay with it? Yes. So that means Nintendo is standing out like a sore sodding thumb, and they do not need the money of some poor little Nintendo fan that's trying to make some rent off some bloody YouTube videos. You know, pulling tool-assisted speedruns is even more disgusting because in many cases they weren't even monetized. Like, he wasn't making any money off them. He got a copyright strike from the anti-piracy team. Anti-fucking piracy. You think this person doesn't own a legitimate copy of that game? Like, he's one of your biggest fans and biggest supporters, and you're pissing on his head. They're clueless. They're fucking clueless. They have no idea what they're doing, and frankly, they should be absolutely blasted for it. Absolutely awful. Next question. Night Spectre asks, what's the proper way to eat an egg? Over easy or bust? Thank you very much. And hey, let me make this abundantly clear to any restaurant that thinks over easy means sunny side up. It fucking doesn't. The clue is in the over. I've ordered eggs over easy before and it's come sunny side up. It's like, no, sunny side up, disgusting, hate it. The kind of gelatinous white for it and all that stuff, horrible. Over easy, and I make some good eggs, man. I know how to make good eggs. A little bit of olive oil, bottom of the pan, high heat, break the egg, lift it slightly, make sure that it's sort of browning on the bottom, take it off the heat, very important, flip by hand, bring the pan up as it's coming down to make sure it cushions the landing so it doesn't break the yolk, and then sear off the heat for about 30 seconds. That's eggs over easy. Done. Keeps the yolk nice and runny, sears the top. Make sure the white is also a little bit seared and not gelatinous. If you give me sunny side up when I ask for over easy, I will ask for your manager. I will. I am that picky. Don't fucking do it. And over easy also does not mean over hard. If I can slice a slice of the yolk and it stays as a slice when I do it, that's not over easy. Do it right. It's not that difficult. Son of Stig, do you think the Mad Max game would be improved by 40k orcs? You know, you could easily replace that with Gorka Morka and it would be just fine. Like, it really would. You could just do a Gorka Morka game in the style of Mad Max and everyone would be fine with it. It's interesting that you bring that up because it's like, the whole idea of like pasting a theme onto a different set of mechanics is something that happens a lot in board games. It happens a bit in video games too, but it's like really common in board games. And often a theme can really elevate the game to the next level. So like a game like Mad Max, yeah, if you made that 40k themed with orcs, it would probably be a better game. You could probably do some crazier stuff with it. Have some more interesting weapons and combat and things like that. You know, have some hand-to-hand combat with, like, chainsaws and shit like that. I'd dig that. I would buy the hell out of that. It is interesting that we don't see too many games attempted. Some do. Some does like, oh, it's this, but with this theme. I'd be okay with a lot of that. I suppose the mod scene covers a lot of that, but lately games obviously haven't supported that too much, so... yeah. I don't know if there's going to be a good 40k game ever again. I hope Space Hulk's okay. Okay, Visorman22, how do you feel is the best way for a lore-heavy but story-weak game to convey it? Environmental storytelling for the most part. I mean, the weird thing is that is a lore-heavy game story-weak? Because I think, like, the biggest example of that's probably Dark Souls, isn't it? Lots of lore, not too much direct storytelling. And it works that way. Like, the Dark Souls method seems to work pretty well. You've got to make sure that the world is interesting enough to actually have people explore it. And maybe, you know, you give them just enough information to help people construct their sort of own narrative based on the little pieces of lore that you leave around. That works, for the most part. I don't know if it works for every game. But it seems to have done a pretty good job. I mean, hell, even Five Nights at Freddy's has a shitload of lore, for God's sake. That's barely got a story at all. So it's really interesting to see how that works. And some companies are starting to really get the hang of it. We're not moving through these questions all that fast, are we? Jesus, we're like an hour and a half behind. I'm sorry, this is just the way. Really? Don't joke about that shit. Can I just, like, point out, like, today is, like, suicide prevention day, I think? Like, saying something like that is really distasteful. So, that's not funny. I'm sorry, it isn't. Don't joke about that shit. Okay, what are some of your favorite biscuits? It's weird to follow that up with that, isn't it? Oh, God. What are some of your favorite biscuits? I don't know. Hobnobs, Jaffa Cakes aren't technically biscuits, I suppose. What are those? There's those European ones that are kind of like butter biscuits with the slab of chocolate on top. They're great. Rockies are good. I like those. What else? Anything by Foxes, except for party rings. Party rings are for peasants. Everything by Foxes is good otherwise. Okay, moving on. Jaden Kaziga. Have you heard about the announcement of the Pokemon Go game? Do you think you might try it out? I'm not interested in it. I won't. No. It was only a matter of time until they did this. I'm surprised it took them this long, but I guess they wanted to come up with a custom peripheral they could sell people. So I guess that works. I'm not interested in it. I've never really been too much into Pokemon, honestly. I see the appeal, but like, it's a very time-consuming game, kind of grindy, with fairly simple battle mechanics. I know it's got a bit more complicated later on with the future iterations, but I don't know. I'm just not into it all that much. But it's an interesting idea. I'm just really surprised they haven't done it already. Kind of surprising. Okay, moving on. Okay. I know that you love what you're doing for a living currently, but since it's not only a bed of roses and has its downsides too, do you have any thoughts on changing your career path more drastically? I mean, to still do what you love, but in a very different way, possibly without all the downsides. I don't think it's really possible, because it's just like the nature of YouTube. We don't need Jamalami in the background, thank you. It's sort of the nature of YouTube and the nature of new media to have that level of fan interaction, and it's really hard to dissociate from that. It's like, would I be a lot happier without reading negative comments? Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is really down to that. It really is. It's like, I like the process of making videos. I like the process of getting in touch with developers. I like the process of going to conventions and seeing what news on offer. I like discussing industry stuff. Obviously, there's some stuff which is very controversial and gets people into a lot of trouble. I still like talking about it from time to time, but still. Have I thought about changing career? I don't even know what I'd do. Like, I think the thing is, like, when you get into this position and you have an audience, you can kind of switch to doing almost anything. You'll lose a lot of your audience doing it, but you'll still retain some of it. So it's like about, well, how can I make a career out of having an audience? Is what pretty much every personality has asked themselves. I don't know what I'd change to do, really. I like working at my own pace on my own stuff too much. I think a lot of people in this do. I mean, I know some people are trying to move into game development. I don't think I would do that. Like, I can't code for toffee, so that's probably got a lot to do with it. Could I get into design? I don't know. I have really no experience with design. It's like, I know what I like in games, but could I design one? And I don't, probably not. So, I have thought about it, but this is just it's gonna be a case of trying to fix the current problem rather than move on to something else, because I like what I do. I like what I do a great deal. It's my favorite job ever. Of course it is. I gotta fix my own personal problems. I don't like the idea of giving up, because I think that lets a lot of people down, and I think I'd really regret it in the long run. But I do have to sort myself out, no doubt about that. Mucka1916, what's your biggest guilty pleasure? Like, you know, do adults have guilty pleasures? Like, once you're an adult, you can really do whatever you want, right? Like, surely there shouldn't be judgment in that regard. Because, like, I could say, like, I like cocktails, and a lot of cocktails are marketed towards women, and they're considered to be a woman's drink or whatever, or a girly drink. I mean, I don't care. I'm 31. I can drink whatever the fuck I want. Thank you. I'm gonna drink something that tastes good. If it happens to be a cocktail, so be it. If it happens to be a cider, so be it. And so it's probably that, you know? And some other people would say, well, isn't wrestling a guilty pleasure? No, I don't feel guilty watching wrestling. I mean, it's dumb from time to time, but who fucking cares? It's my own personal entertainment. Life's too fucking short to worry about what other people think about the entertainment that you consume. That's bonkers. So yeah, there you go. Girly drinks. Which, in my opinion, don't even exist. Drink whatever the fuck you want. You're an adult. You get to make your own choices. And frankly, if you have friends that would judge you on that, beyond merely just joking around in a friendly ribbing, find better friends. There's nothing wrong with, like, joking around and taking the piss, but if they're serious about it, it's like, dude, are you grown up or are you 12? You know? Are you acting like a child? That sort of social acceptance, to me, is something that is high school drama bullshit. Okay, Any news on co-optional bathrobes? No, they won't sell. They won't. Like, not only would it cost a great deal to make them, we wouldn't sell enough for to break even. It wouldn't be worth it. Like, it's too niche. It's the reason we don't do niche merchandise. Because it's not worth it in the long run. Like, you got to invest a lot of money into doing that. We'd rather not lose money when we sell stuff. Will there be any more Snark Tank episodes, says Emerton. Yes, absolutely. It will happen. When? Sometime. Soon. Certainly. Okay, I've talked about that before. As I said, I don't know when that's going to happen. It is happening, but right now, there's too many tournaments going on right now for us to fit anything in. So, once it's off-season, we'll start it then. Is this a job interview question? Rocket Wolf is like, how do you see the gaming industry and your involvement in 2 to 3 years? I don't know. Not a clue. Hopefully there'll still be video games. Hopefully some of them will be good. Hopefully I'll still be covering them. I have no idea. I don't plan that far ahead. I'm gonna keep doing this until I can't do it anymore. So, it's not like the format doesn't work. So, people still want to watch it. I'll keep making it. As for the industry, who can predict where it's gonna go? Not a clue. We may very well have this indie apocalypse. You know, where we have less indie games being developed because they simply can't get enough attention to properly sustain their studios. That might happen. But maybe we just go through booms and recessions in that way. And maybe this is just the natural order of it. Okay, moving on. Oh my god, really? Scrubtard says, apparently in the Skitarii Codex, the Mechanicum found a storage device containing all the STC blueprints ever created. But it's on a demon planet in the warp, so they're mobilizing billions of Skitarii. What do you think's going to happen? Nothing. Because that's what happens in 40k. They can't. Right. Here's what would happen. This is going 40k lore nerd for a second. If the Mechanicum suddenly discovers an intact storage device with all standard template construct blueprints ever created, they become super powerful, the balance of power shifts in the universe, and all of the... bloody hell. All of the grim dark stuff about, like, you know, the Imperium hanging on by the skin of its teeth disappears because they suddenly have incredible technology and a massive advantage. It becomes Crusade era again. Where it's like, oh shit, look at this. We can make so many more good Space Marines. We can make so much better gear. We dominate everybody now as a result of this. And that's why they won't do it. That's why Games Workshop will not advance the lore to that point. It will be another disappointment. Like, they'll mobilize... They'll go find it, and they'll find out that a demon has fucking possessed it, and it eats them all. That's 40k. It's grimdark. You can't have that level of success in 40k, because it ceases to be grimdark at that point. So that will never happen. It will never happen. It's a perpetual state of limbo, where everybody's miserable, and that's why the universe works very well. Do you think it's possible for new YouTubers to make it, or is the market too flooded? I think it's possible to make it, but I don't think there's a reliable way to make it. I think it's entirely random. Like, it seems like we get a new Minecraft millionaire every, like, 2 weeks. And that's still happening. Let's Players sort of pop up out of nowhere. How? I don't know. I have no idea. Like, there's no predictable way to make that work. No predictable way whatsoever. Can you get into it? Yes. Can you reliably get into it? No. Could you ever get reliably into it? Probably not. Is it even harder to get into it now than it was? Yes, definitely. It's much, much harder to get into it as a professional and do it full time and actually make it on YouTube. And there's no real advice that I can give people that is a surefire way to become successful. Because you've got to break that barrier of people actually giving a damn about what you do. That's actually really, really hard sometimes. Okay, since you and Jenna played Honey Pop, can we expect you to play Honeycam Studio? I don't know. It depends on the content of that game. We'll see. I know a lot. We got like 3/4 of a million views in our Honey Pop video. That makes me so sad. That depresses me sometimes. It really does. She'll probably try and force me to play. Again, it depends on the level of content. We might not be able to even show that on YouTube. Zamalin says, does your son show interest in what you do for a living in what way? Yes, absolutely. Would he like to be in videos? Yes. Do I think that's not a good idea? Yes. I mean, I think there's you've got to have a certain gap between the internet and, you know, a 12-year-old. I mean, why do you think that I was so upset about this stuff that's been happening over the last couple of days? It was over a 12-year-old kid. My kid's a 12-year-old kid. Like, I'm a parent. Like, it affects me a great deal because I see that I'm like, what would I do if that was my kid? What would... If it was a bunch of people saying, you know, get that kid out of there. That kid's annoying. Blah, blah, blah. What would I say if that was my kid? I'd be fucking furious. Like, I'd lose my shit. So, some people don't understand that because they don't have kids or whatever, but it's a cool industry, but simultaneously there's a lot of really, really nasty stuff that goes on, and as a result, I'd kind of like to keep away from that for as long as possible. Who is your favorite guest on the podcast so far? Oh, there's favoritism. I'm not allowed to say that because everyone else will be disappointed. It's from Rylick. Who's my favorite guest? I mean, it comes down to, like, who did we have the best shows with? Who had the most to offer? Who had the most interesting perspective? There's a bunch of them. I couldn't identify. I know I'm kind of bailing out on this, but I could never identify one person because there's people like Jim Sterling, there's people like Julia Hardy, Alana Pierce, Maggie, that all provide like incredible insight and this really cool perspective, and were very good on the show. I always appreciate someone that fits right in and can just speak very fluently and isn't awkward, doesn't have a problem there. But there's tons of guests that I really enjoyed being on the show. I couldn't pick a favorite. I couldn't. I'm sorry. I'm copping out on it. I can't do it. I just can't do it. Can't pick a favorite. Why do you have such weird names, everybody? Akoho says, did you get the pin from PAX Prime with your face on it? What's the most annoying Jesse has ever been on the podcast? Yeah, I've got the pin somewhere. They're sending me one. What the most annoying Jesse has ever been on the podcast? I don't think Jesse's annoying, per se. I think that's his shtick. Like, sometimes he gets really stubborn, and, like, if that was a regular conversation, maybe I'd be pissed off about it, but it's entertainment. It's part of the show. That's funny to me. So that to me is good watching. So, I don't find him annoying. I don't think I've ever really found him annoying. I found some guests annoying, but not him. Where was he sexually suggested? But come on, really? Better questions than that. Okay, that's not a question, but I appreciate it regardless. If you were a superhero, what would your costume be? Something sensible, and not likely to catch in revolving doors. No capes. Absolutely not. We know how bad that can get. And also, not bright and colorful. Like, fuck. I don't want them to see me coming. You kidding me? Would I even want to identify as a superhero? Like, there's a lot of bullshit involving that. Like, you'd want to do it in secret, surely. You want to be a secret superhero. You get less attention that way. Did you ever play GTA 2, and do you think it was good for its time? Yeah, that's an interesting one, because actually I did. I played GTA 2, and I thought that game was actually really interesting with the whole faction system. And I also liked the idea that it took, like, a futuristic interpretation of stuff. It's like weird cars and vehicles and weird weapons. That was great. I mean, I'd play another GTA in the future, though I guess that's Saints Row 3 and 4, really, isn't it, to some degree? It would be cool, though. I think future tech is really interesting for that sort of thing. I wonder if they go back to that. I'd still like to see a sort of old-school mob GTA. I think that would be great, but then again, that's Mafia, isn't it? So, yeah. Beer or cider? The answer is, of course, cider. I don't like beer. I've never liked the taste of beer. Never will like the taste of beer, I imagine. Why is my question not on the list? Didn't I? I answered your question, didn't I? I answered yours right at the start, damn it! Don't start with me. This is from like an hour and a half ago, so... Okay. Here's a question. From Play Then Say, in your recent YouTube video about indie games, you didn't seem to talk about brand loyalty being a massive ideal in the electronic market. How important do you feel it is in the software market? It definitely exists. That, you know, if you put out a really, really good game, then you can absolutely get people that start to follow you and are more likely to buy your next one. Totally. Though, with a lot of indie studios that haven't really made a lot of games, they haven't really had the opportunity to build that brand loyalty. There are some, certainly, who are very reliable. You know, I think that... I wouldn't say Tiny Build because they're more of a publisher now. The weird thing is you kind of get loyalty to indie publishers now. Like, people will go after Devolver games because Devolver market all their games in a particular way, or they'll buy games, like, published by Adult Swim. Because they all seem to have, like, a certain standard to them. Devolver often does, like, kind of very pixely games. The weird stuff, of course, like Shadow Warrior, which is very modern, sort of crops up there, but... There's maybe, like, brand loyalty to publishers. I think developers certainly do have them, absolutely. But that doesn't necessarily translate into anything. You know, the biggest example I think of a game that had every right to be super successful and wasn't was the next Mojang game, which was Scrolls. It's like, oh, damn, the guys that made Minecraft, one of the most popular games of all time, making a card game. Did that result in a hugely successful game? No, it's shutting down. Is brand loyalty that strong? Sometimes. Especially if... I think with like a developer like Paradox that makes a lot of grand strategy, I think with them, you can see clear brand loyalty because it's not just down to being loyal to the developer and what the developer does, it's being loyal to a genre. And you like the way that particular developer does that genre. There's not that many developers that do that. A lot of devs try different things, and as a result, they don't necessarily inspire brand loyalty that way, because people were hoping for another experience like the previous one, and they don't get one. And they get upset about that. So it exists. Yeah, I mean, it totally exists, but to what level? I mean, that's very much on a case-by-case basis. Oh god. If I do a Metal Gear Solid 5 video, am I going to bring up FOB multiplayer and microtransactions? That's the thing, like, the game is so fucking huge. I mean, usually I focus mostly on the single player if the multiplayer is not really substantive in any way. But I should certainly mention it. And obviously, I don't approve of the microtransactions. I never have. You know, I disapproved of it in games like Dead Space and things like that, too. But I still like the single player of that game. I'd probably have to bring it up, but again, tackling a game of that size, especially when you never got review code, is nuts. It's really crazy. Like, and I'm afraid that I just wouldn't do the game justice from my impression of it. There's some games where first impressions just don't work, and that's one of them. I think we'll see. No promises. Do you believe games will be remastered until the end of time? That's from Larsco. Yeah, totally, because people keep buying them, right? And honestly, I don't really have a problem with remasters as long as they're done well. And in some cases, like, it's less of a remaster and more, we are porting it to the next-gen system. Because maybe you own a PS4, you never owned a PS3, so you want to play this, and there's no backwards compatibility anymore. So I think, yeah, they will keep happening. And I don't have a problem with that, necessarily. I have a problem with people charging full price for a lackluster edition. Like, Prototype is bollocks. The remaster of that runs worse than the original does. Silent Hill, that's bollocks. The remaster of that was awful. Just, as long as they do it properly, I don't really mind. It's not like, harmful, I don't think. I think if it's taking development time from other things, then maybe that's an issue. But a lot of the time, that's not the case. And often a remaster can end up funding something a bit riskier, so there's a benefit to it. Any thoughts on a community manager, TB? Sounds like it would solve most of your problems. No, it wouldn't. Absolutely not. It wouldn't help. And the reason it wouldn't help is because a community manager wouldn't stop me reading that stuff, wouldn't stop me getting upset at that stuff, and I would, you know, when I get into trouble online, it's usually because I'm emotional, I lash out, and I don't think a community manager is going to be able to stop me from doing that. Like, if someone's pressed my berserk button, like, it's very hard for me to not say anything. Like, it feels... It's a mixture of fury and sort of anxiety and tension. And I feel, like, very anxious if I'm not able to, like, tackle something head on. Like, I feel like I've got to solve the problem. And if I'm not able to do it, that is really frustrating. So, I don't see how it would help, you know? And, I mean, we'd need an official form for that anyway, so... I don't really know how that would help. Okay, we've already answered that. Levetnikin, how does being YouTube famous affect your life in unusual ways that you wouldn't expect? I don't think there is anything that unusual about it. Like, it's still weird to run into people. It's like, hey, I recognize you from this. That's never going to get normal. Certainly. You know, one thing it has done, which is a negative, is it affects the kind of friends that we look for. We either look for people that are in the industry, or very much people that, like, have no connection to it whatsoever and don't know who I am. Because we've had previous instances of people sort of trying to become friendly, and they've really just wanted it to kind of... It's the fan-like behavior, you know? When I hang out with friends, I do it to get away from that stuff. Like, there's a difference between interacting with viewers and fans at, like, a convention or whatever, in that relationship, and actual friends. So, it's definitely restricted the kind of people that we can, like, comfortably become friends with. Usually I want to be friends with people in the industry because they get it. Either they understand it. You can vent to them and they're not going to think it's weird. People with a regular job, if you tell them, oh, damn, it sucked, like, I was at home all day working on this video, and they're like, they'll turn around like, what the fuck, dude? You're complaining about that? Like, I work in a factory. So it's really hard to relate as a result, and you don't want to seem like an absolute dick. So I think that's the real, like, the most unexpected thing that it's changed, like, the kind of people that you can be friends with comfortably. Oh, my voice is going. I'm going to take a lozenge. I'll take a break in a moment. I mean, I guess this is, you know, I've already answered this. Like I said, for me, it's like, it's the comments. It's really hard to deal with, and that's a personal problem. I need to fucking deal with it. Dragon X Mod, what do you think it will take from a content creator standpoint to YouTube to take DMCA abuse seriously, or will that never happen? They're in a weird position because really they've got to follow the law, but simultaneously the way that they follow the law is in a way that is, like, above and beyond what they need to be doing. Like, they don't require people to submit official DMCA requests. They literally just need to fill out a little form, which is a YouTube thing, and then they shoot first and ask questions later. I want them to stop doing that. And I need them to punish people that abuse the system. What will it take for them to get... I think they already do take it seriously. Like, I talk to YouTube on a reasonably regular basis now, the gaming end of it. They do take it seriously, but they're in a very precarious position where publishers could suddenly turn around and just en masse say, nope, you can't have our game on your service. So they're doing outreach to these publishers to explain to them the benefits of allowing this to happen. And they're writing up big reports and putting together statistics to prove it. So I think they do take it seriously, but they have to be very diplomatic in the way that they approach it. Because they don't want to piss off the content creators, but simultaneously they don't want to piss off... words. They don't want to piss off the publishers and developers either, because that could lead to some legal action. It could lead to some really awkward things going on. Alright, I'm going to take a break. I'll come back and answer some more questions. Probably like half an hour more. Again, sorry if we don't get to your questions, but, you know, if I'm answering Q&A for 2.5 hours and I've literally only got through, like, the first 10 minutes, there's not much you can do about that. Alright, break. Some more music from Guardian Heroes, perhaps. That sounds like a good idea. Let's do a little bit more of that, and I'll be right back after I've found a throat lozenge. Alright, let's get back to it. Maybe another half an hour or so. 2.5 hours of talking is really doing my voice in. We'll give it a shot, though. And again, I apologize for those that have not had their question answered as of yet, because there's lots of them. Okay. How's your current involvement with the PC Master Race? I never had involvement with the PC Master Race, did I? I mean, I've never posted on their forum. I find it funny, amusing. I think there's a few people that take it too seriously. On both sides of it, you know. There's people within that forum that take the whole peasantry thing too seriously, and then there's people on the outside that are like, this group is a hate group! Ah! Everybody takes it too seriously. It's a joke, you know? It's a silly forum. You gotta take it all in context, I think. I read it. Yeah, I shouldn't read it. I used to read it on a fairly frequent basis. I still do from time to time. It's fine. It's pretty funny for the most part. For the most part. You know, every now and again they take it too seriously. But I've got to say, like, I think that particular subreddit is kind of aware of that, because there are frequent threads saying, oi, don't do this, cut it out. And I appreciate that. I think that's good. They haven't gone off the rails. Like, yeah, there's a lot of bullshit like where people are just offensive to people that use consoles, which is ridiculous, you know? The whole peasant thing, it's a joke. It's not real. People don't actually think that. It's, you know, gaming on console is fine if you want to do that. But I think for the most part it's fine. I don't really see the problem with it. Do you like Asian food? If so, what is your favorite kind of dish? Says Angelo Smasher. Okay, two things. In America, my favorite Asian dish is pad seo, the Thai dish, which is the egg noodles, sort of soy-based sauce, usually chicken, sometimes pork and beef, broccoli. Really nice. Could eat bowls of that. Awesome. In the UK, it's really bad yellow Chinese curry on chips, fried rice, and noodles. That's not really food, is it? But it's awesome. I know, I'm horrible. But yeah, when I went back to the UK, I ate that, and it was the best thing. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Or will you do a WTF on Freedom Planet once the expansion releases? Probably not. Will I do 15 minutes of game on it? Probably. That was one of those weird ones where I played a few hours of Freedom Planet, and I like it. And it was just kind of too late to do the video and have it feel relevant. So I'm in this weird spot now. It's like, well, should I cover it? This game's been out for like a year. But I kind of should, because it's kind of good, and they deserve it, but still. I mean, 15 minutes of game is probably a good format for that. Just get that out. Okay. All right, moving on. What else we got? Oh. Are you a US citizen? No. I am a green card holder. Why? Because I can't become a citizen for a few more years yet. Will I? Probably. And the reason for that is that there are only a finite number of green cards, and the longer I hold on to mine means that someone else can't have it. So, ultimately, like, if it gets to that point, I will probably get citizenship, simply because it means that it frees up a green card for somebody else who is otherwise stuck outside the country. And the worst possible position that, like, those people can be in is, like, if a family's separated because they can't get a green card, because I've been through that. I know what that's like, and I'd never inflict that knowingly on somebody else. So, yeah, that's probably how it's going to go. What's your favorite metal soundtrack in a game? I mean, probably all the Guilty Gear games, honestly. They do a lot of metal. That's pretty good, and there's a little bit of metal in Metal Gear Rising, although a lot of that's also electronic, so probably the Guilty Gear games, I think. They got a great metal soundtrack. Although, you can't knock a good old bit of Doom. And Quake 2, of course. They absolutely awesome soundtracks. Let's see. Kind of already answered this. Answered that kind of with the favorite soundtracks, I guess. Tech-Twatter, I suppose. How's the Airsoft collection coming along? You haven't shown off any shiny new toys for some time. Yeah, because I don't get a chance to use them. So, like, it seems stupid for me to keep buying them. Like, once I get a little bit fitter, I want to go and do... Obviously, once it's, like, springtime again, I want to go do some field Airsoft stuff. That, I think, would be good. But right now, I am not in any way fit. I need to get my shit together. What's your take on active aggression now it's finished? I actually haven't played it since its launch, so I couldn't tell you. Like, I only played the multiplayer, and I thought it was pretty good, although I found the UI quite confusing, and the sheer number of upgrades make the game really complicated to me. Like, I've got to figure out a decent build order for that. I know a lot of people have said the campaign really isn't that great. I haven't tried it yet, so I really couldn't say. I will look at it at some point, but there's so much more that I've got to do. Has there been an appreciable difference in CPM or whatnot since Blip got shut down? That's from Classic Rogan. I don't think so. I don't believe so, no. But then again, like, there's 5,000,001 reasons why CPM could be what it is on a particular day, so it might be a correlation-causation issue. So I don't know. This I've already answered. I answered this right at the start. Why has your channel stopped growing? It hasn't. It's still growing. It's just not growing as fast as it was. Like, the channel goes through, like, periods of slow growth and periods of fast growth, depending on what comes on. Like, for instance, like, we gain right now, about 200 new subs every day. So it's still growing. It's not shrinking. But then again, there'll be days where we get, like, 2,000 new subs. Usually because we've hit a hot button this year or covered something popular, and then we'll get a boost for a while. That happens with all channels. Like, it's not unusual, but we are still growing. I mean, if it weren't, it would be hard for me to isolate why. Like, it would probably just be down to, like, maybe we've reached the extent of what our audience can do, or maybe we don't cross-promote enough. That sort of thing. A channel, I think, always has, like, a finite audience that they'll reach, and sometimes they just won't grow any bigger than that. Ours are still growing, we don't grow as fast. And I think, like, a lot of it comes down to the fact that there haven't been many major AAA releases lately. So every time there's a AAA release, we get a big spike in the amount of people that subscribe, but we've had months of, like, indies. And I'm sorry to say it, but indies don't necessarily bring people to your channel. AAAs do. And there's just not been that many. So I think the slow period is probably down to the fact that there just aren't all that many big games releasing right now. What streaming system do I use? I use XSplit. Simple as that. Do I have any recommendations? Use OBS. It's free. They're both good. They both have different pieces of functionality. I learned XSplit first, so that's what I stick with. It's the same with, like, what video editing suite do you use? I use Premiere because it's the one I learned first. Is Vegas just as good? Probably. Am I going to learn it? No. You know, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, for the most part. XSplit has a couple of little issues, but so does OBS, so I'd recommend OBS because it's free. Oh, here we go. It's been quite some time since you did anything with the Yogscast, so have any plan to do any content with them in the future? I do content with some of the Yogscast guys, but not with the main three, because as you're probably aware, there was a falling out, and as a result, I don't do anything with them anymore. It's really simple as that. We've had the podcast with Sips lately. I'm going to do stuff with Pyrian Flax, who's also a member of the Yogscast. We've had Yogscast people on the show. It's not a problem. But doing anything with the big three, I wouldn't... no, not anymore. There was too much of a falling out there. Like, can that be solved? Maybe. Do I have any interest in solving it right now? Not really. Like, whatever. Sometimes there are falling outs. It sucks. I don't really feel the need to go and try and mend that particular bridge. What's your opinion on the new Iron Maiden album? Pretty damn good. I don't like Empire of the Clouds, which a lot of people got upset about me over. It's like, why? It's epic. It's amazing. It's 18 minutes. Yes, but maybe it's just the theme I don't like. I think for the most part, it's a pretty good album. There's a couple of tracks that aren't maybe as good, but for the most part, it's really nice. It reminds me of Brave New World. It's better than A Matter of Life and Death, certainly. It's better than Final Frontier, I think, as well. Sigata says, will you do some tabletop game reviews as a passion project in the future? We thought about it. It's just about figuring out best ways to film it. It's hard to do it properly. Like, because that's filming a real thing, and that's, like, outside of our area of expertise. So, like, oh, cameras, lighting, sound engineering. Uh-oh, it's not on a computer. I don't know what I'm doing. I'd love to. I'm not going to promise it. I think we kind of already answered this, but I suppose I can go into it in a small amount of detail. What is a remaster in... I'm not sure what you're saying there. What's a good remaster? What's a bad remaster? I'm sure it's what you're saying. Okay, I mean, to me, a remaster is bringing something up to date with current technology without sacrificing the core of what made that game good. A bad remaster is when you just slap a little coat of paint on it and release it for full price and expect people to buy it. A really bad remaster is when it's actually worse. Like you screw something up, as I mentioned earlier with Silent Hill and with the Prototype. Otherwise, give it a coat of paint. Like, the big thing for me is, like, if the technology didn't allow 60 FPS at the time, let it do it now. That's when I'll actually buy a game. Like, if the game's remastered and runs at 60 FPS, whereas previously it didn't, I'll buy that. Absolutely, and I think a lot of people will. Maybe I'm overestimating the number of console gamers that care about that, but... yeah, to me, it's like, up the frame rate, polish it up, maybe do some stuff with the UI, because a lot of UI from older games is often very obtuse. Maybe sort out the tutorial, maybe teach the game a little bit better. And just try and keep what is core to that experience alive. Kind of already answered that. Were you aware that Dota 2 moved to the Source 2 client, has a brand new UI and such? I was actually not aware of that. And I'll give it a try. I haven't played it in the last few weeks. I'll give it a shot. This is nice. Jack of Blades asks, if you could make one law all publishers had to abide by, what would it be? Only one? Damn. That's a really hard question, because if I could only pick one, it's like, what would do the most good? Because I could say, like, don't do pre-orders, but then again, like, if you look at that in the long run, is that, like, super harmful compared to other issues? Okay, I think maybe the most consumer-friendly one would be this. Your game on day one must fucking work properly. Do not release games that you're just going to patch later from a performance standpoint. If you want to patch to add features, great. If you want to patch to add content, great. If you want to patch to fix shit, your stuff should have worked on day one. Don't sell it on day one if it doesn't work. And you know it doesn't work. That's the thing. They knew it didn't work in most situations. They were absolutely aware of it. This was not... But they released it anyway because they felt it would be better to do that. They make more money that way. Don't do that. That would be the one law. Thankfully, I suppose Steam refunds maybe gives us an out of that. But yeah, my law would be your game should work properly on day one, without exception. There's no excuse. This I can't answer. I have no idea what the next country is. It's whatever pops up in the box. Or Sasku says, what is the sweet spot between open world and linear game design? Tough one. Tough one. Because I don't know if there is a sweet spot. Because I see games trying to find the sweet spot. Like, Rage is a good example, yeah? Rage has a pseudo-open world feel to it, but it's not really an open world. But a lot of people didn't like that fact. Like, it's often like, oh, we want a linear experience or we want an open world experience. We don't want something in between. To me, it's about this. Linear experience, but large open levels with multi-pronged ways of approaching them. Maybe use a hub at some point. Like, I thought Crysis 2 was kind of good like that. It's like, okay, it's not open world in the same... I mean, really, was Crysis 1 open world? Because that was kind of restricted as well. It was just better at hiding it. It's like, oh, this is a large level, and I can kind of progress through it in the way that I want to. To me, that's the sweet spot. It's like, you're not on rails, you're not shoved through in a straight line, but simultaneously, it's not somewhere you could just get lost, and it still has direction to it, and the pacing is right. Open world games often have zero pacing as a result of the fact that you can just go wherever the hell you want. I like a well-paced game. Like a game that sort of builds excitement and builds to an interesting conclusion. So I think maybe that's the sweet spot. And there's a few games that did that. I think Wolfenstein did it really well. I think Crysis 2 did it pretty well. Crysis 3, to some degree as well, did it fairly well. Deus Ex is probably the master of it, I think. It's like large open levels, places to explore, all sorts of things to find, but simultaneously, you still have to get to point B at the end of the day. Okay. Next question. I recall you had problems with your PC, says Drunken Valley. How did that turn out in the end? My PC has a lot of weird quirks. Right now, I have a disappearing SSD. I'm trying to figure out why that is. My main game SSD, which is not my Steam SSD, the one that I put games that aren't on Steam on, keeps disappearing at random, and I don't know why. And it usually takes a few reboots to make it come back. Sometimes on reboot, it just doesn't post for some reason. Don't know why. The fans are noisier than I would like. Don't really know why that is. What else is wrong with it? It doesn't crash, so that's a plus, but like there's weird situations where it won't boot Windows, like it'll just freeze in the middle of it. So yeah, I think everyone's PC has quirks that develop over time, but it sucks that that's the case. We've already answered this like 5,000 times, I think. When did we meet? We met at BlizzCon 2005. Simple as that. Nothing more to say about that. We've already answered the Co-optional Lounge question. What game are you looking forward to most this year? Probably Deus Ex, but isn't that now 2016? I think they pushed it. Is there anything? Maybe Street Fighter V. That's coming out this year, right? Sounds like it. Yeah, probably Street Fighter V. And then, of course, Space Hulk if it's good. Battlefleet Gothic if it's good. XCOM 2 is probably pretty high on the list as well. Like, I don't really look forward to too many games these days. But those are, like, games that I can see myself playing a lot of. Already kind of answered that. Space Hulk is the one I'm most interested in. I mean, Vermintide is fantasy, so I'm not as interested in Warhammer Fantasy as opposed to 40k. Battlefleet Gothic is 40k. The problem is, like, there's been a lot of Warhammer games that have come out lately that just suck. So it's hard to be excited for them anymore. But those ones look like they're maybe putting some effort into them. The Inquisitor game looks okay as well. That's by the guys that made The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing. They'll probably do a decent job of it. Although that's not a genre I'm hugely into. Was it a treat to be back in old Blighty for CoxCon? Yeah. It kind of was, you know, I hadn't been back in 3 years, so, you know, missed some of the food, missed the weather, like, being able to go outside without feeling like I'm melting is pretty cool. That's alright. Being able to get around without having to drive everywhere, that's alright too. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't miss it on a regular basis, but there's always a few little things that, it's like, damn, I really wish I could have that here, you know? Like, I wish I could get anywhere without having to fly. That's the thing I hate the most about America, because I hate flying. And getting anywhere without getting on a plane is actually really hard sometimes. So, that sucks. It's like, hey, I can go to New York on a 13-hour train. I've done it twice, because I just didn't want to fly it. Because I had a really bad experience flying up to New York the previous time. They put me on this tiny little 2x2, and it was really awful, and I'm terrified of flying. Like, I'll be flying to DC, and that's like an hour, 10-minute flight, but I'm still terrified of it. And I've got someone wanting me to come over to the West Coast this month as well to do a gig. I'm like, well, there's money on the line, but it's like, damn, I don't want to fly to the West Coast. I hate flying. I get upset when I even think about it. It sucks. I need to get over it. I don't know how to get over it. I just need to be anesthetized before I get on a plane. Scrapjack says, in light of your recent video on the saturation of platformers, what genre and trend do you think is going to implode next? Implode. I don't know if a genre ever implodes, per se, because you still have successes in that genre. Like, I think that people trying to make CCGs are probably not going to find much success. I think what's already imploding is definitely Dota clones. There are very few successful Dota clones. Dota, League, and to a lesser extent, Heroes of the Storm and Smite have that genre locked down. Getting into that genre is just impossible. And we're seeing so many games come out that look good in beta, and it doesn't matter. Like, they're shut down. Sins of a Dark Age, pretty much shutting down, far as I can tell. Dawngate, shut down. Infinite Crisis, shut down. Were those games bad? No. Did they offer anything new? Can they rip people away from what they used to? No. I think with a genre like that, there's a lot of familiarity. Once you get invested in a game like that, because they're very complicated, they have a huge learning curve, you think, why would I want to relearn? Like, I'm just getting good at this. Why would I want to change? So I think it's got to be that genre, absolutely. Favorite part of being a dad? God, that's a personal question. It's difficult. What do I brag to other people to in regards to my son? I don't really brag. I'm not that sort of person. And, like, who would I brag to? The internet? I kind of try and keep that separate where possible. It's like, he's better at Terraria than I am. He has all the stuff. I don't, I guess, you know. He plays PC games a lot. That's good. I appreciate that. You know, he plays console too, but he's into PC stuff. And he's very competent at his computer, which is going to be useful. You know, I'd like him to start learning to code. That would be good. Learn to code from an early age. That's a great skill to have in later life. Opinion on... Oh, we've already done that one. That's kind of a personal question. It's coming along, you know? Nothing too terrible right now. What's your favorite WTF video? Not necessarily the best game, but the best video. That's from Tondor. I think Far Cry 3 still stands out as being a really good one. Because I think it really encapsulated what's cool about that format. Something unexpected happened in the middle of something fairly mundane. And that's what's really cool about that format. That's something like a review can never truly capture. So I like that. That was a great one. What else? It's usually always ones where something unexpected and really cool happens. I still think our video on Brothers was really good. Maybe I didn't communicate my enthusiasm well enough, but I still think that stands as, like, it's not one of our most viewed videos, but I still think it was, like, it was a video where I was able to kind of pour out my passion for a title in, like, 20 minutes, and there's something really good about that. So yeah, probably those two. Already answered that. Kind of already answered this. This is a good one. To Shadow52, what genre of games would you like to see indie developers tackle more? Good one. FPS. Single-player FPS. Old-school style FPS. There's not enough of those. A few devs have tried it. Like, there's, I've forgotten the name of that stupid thing. There was one that was kickstarted, which is a very retro-style one. And, of course, there's, like, games like Rack. I don't think there's enough good single-player FPS anymore. And by that, I mean the old style, with, like, interesting level design. And you can do it. You can totally do it. It doesn't require, like, a big budget. You can use old-school graphics, and people would actually appreciate that. You know, if you give me a game that looks like Doom again with modern pixel art, I'd play the hell out of that. If it had interesting weapons and good enemies and good combat. Yeah, so FPS, actually. Not multiplayer FPS, single-player FPS. That would be cool. I'd like to see more of that. I'd say card games, but people are already trying that, so... Curious if you'll cover the upcoming Warhammer games in any form, like Total War Warhammer, since they're published by Sega. No. And that sucks. That really sucks, because I really would love to cover that. Not unless they sort things out. I've been trying for years to kind of get some sort of apology out of them for the bullshit they put us through, but they never have. I know for a fact that, like, Creative Assembly have nothing against us, but it's got to come from Sega in some way. It doesn't even have to be from Sega Japan. It's just got to come from a Sega person. Like, I just want them to acknowledge the damage they did. And they just won't do it. And I've got to stand on principle on that, because it's not for me, it's for those channels that got shut down, that didn't have a big audience that they could use to defend themselves. You got to stand on principle on that kind of shit. You really do. Can I have your 1,000 suns? Fuck you. Absolutely not. You're not worthy of Zinch. Have you ever missed out on one interview or covering one game for whatever reason that you really regret? It's from Barkstrom. Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of games, I think, that I regret not really covering. Especially ones that sort of became big. I definitely regret not covering stuff that suffered, maybe as a result of that really needed the boost. There's some AAAs that I just never got around to. Like, I never got my Dragon Age video done. I played 60 hours of that. I know what my opinion is. I could probably do that video tomorrow, but what's the relevance of it? What's the point? There's no point. I've already made my opinion clear on multiple podcasts on things like that. So every now and again, there'll be a game that just like the stars don't align and something happens that prevents me from doing it. I'm trying to think if there's like anything else. You know, Minecraft. Early on Minecraft, really. I just wonder, I wonder if we would have got a boost from that. But then again, if I'd really like got into that, would have been pressured to make more Minecraft videos, and would the channel really be what it is now? Hard to say. And there's one other thing, Star Ruler 2. I still haven't got a video done for that. I am having real problems getting into that game. And I feel really bad, because like I read their posts like, yeah, we might be... You know, we might be shutting down, we might not be able to afford. I'm like, damn. That game's got some interesting ideas, but some of it is so alien to me. It's really hard for me to grasp. I'm like, I need to cover that. But it's hard to do it justice. And the biggest fear that I have is doing a bad video about it. If I screw it up, that does so much damage. Like, in many ways, I often find myself in this quandary. Is it worth doing a bad video on something rather than no video at all? I don't know. So yeah, there's definitely regrets. There's always going to be regrets of things that I've missed. Freedom Planet's kind of another one as well. Like, I should have covered that when it came out, but the stars did not align. There was other things going on. Alright. Am I becoming more of a cat person? No, fucking cats. No. Screw those damn bastards. Demanding little assholes. Pulling things off the table. Making a mess. No. If you could have the audience or group of any other streamer, YouTuber, or player, who would it be? For all the shit that goes on, I still don't think I'd trade, because I think you'd get stuff like that regardless of what your audience is. Like, more often than not, audiences are quite similar, but the way that someone handles them is different. Like, people bring up Day 9 as a great example of that. Like, Day 9 just puts on this relentless face of positivity, and it maybe inspires his audience to do the same. Possibly. But that's just not my... I'm not that kind of person. I can't do that. It would be fake if I did it. I don't think I'd trade, honestly. It just wouldn't work, because it would involve, like, changing my content to suit them. It would change what I'm currently doing, and I think what I'm currently doing content-wise is good. So I'd stick with what I've got. What else do we get? I'm going to be wrapping it up in a bit because I'm getting kind of tired and my voice is starting to go. What's the longest you've looked into or played a Paradox Round strategy? I think never. I mean, I've played some Paradox games, but they've never been the really grand strategy ones. It's just a genre that I find really intriguing, and I simultaneously don't think I've got the time for. Do I think I could ever get into one? Maybe Stellaris, possibly. We'll see. Maybe Stellaris. Because the theme's interesting to me. I like to do space strategy. That's something I will spend time learning. Why do you believe games that are technically uncomfortable to play with consoles sell well on consoles, like first-person shooters, such as Bloodstained? Because they're not uncomfortable for those people. It's like, for a PC gamer, playing on a controller for an FPS is like heresy, but lots of people are totally fine with controllers. It's what they got used to. And I never got used to it, so I can't do it. They sell well because people like that genre. FPS sells well, simple as that. So if you've got to play it on a controller, so be it. And a lot of people actually prefer to do that. Is it objectively worse? Accuracy-wise, sure. But that doesn't bother them. They don't care about that. Have you thought about DMing for roleplay? No, I don't know the rules, man. I couldn't do it. I've told you about my problem with learning rules. I couldn't DM. No. I definitely don't want to do that. I mean, I could come up with some really interesting stories, I think, because I'm a stupid 40k nerd, but the actual DMing process, I think I'd be terrible at it. Have you considered trying a plant-based diet? Studies show it helps fight off cancer. There's a lot of things that help fight off cancer or lower the risk of cancer. The thing is, I already have it, so it's a bit late now. I mean, make my diet healthier? Sure, absolutely. You know, I've cut down on a lot of snacking. I've cut down on the amount of red meat that I eat, because obviously, you know, that's not good for the heart or whatever. I'm eating a lot more whole grain stuff. You know, I'm trying to do more heart-healthy stuff. Not that that really affects cancer in any way, but the kind of jury's still out in many ways. I think, you know, just trying to eat a balanced, healthy diet is probably the best way. Like, I don't think fad diets are the way to go. What's the reason you've largely transitioned to doing port reports for major AAA titles and omitting the game's critique outside of the technical aspect? I think that is I think that's a misconception. It is a misconception for a couple of reasons. That's not what's happened. But over the last few months, it can appear that way. Why can it appear that way? Simply because the games have been things like Batman. Couldn't do a WTF as a Batman because it runs like shit. Like, what's the point? And what's the point of doing a video on a game that's not even on sale anymore, you know? Like, I easily could have done a WTF on that, but I didn't bother to keep playing it because it ran like arse. So, like, right, what's the most important thing I can do right now? Port report, ward people off, make sure people know the state the game's in, okay. Like, for Metal Gear Solid, it's like, it's because that game is so huge. Maybe there'll be a WTF as a Metal Gear Solid, maybe there won't be. Mad Max, there absolutely will be, because I think I've put just about enough time into it. But, like, what are the AAA releases that I've missed this year? What are the major AAA releases that I've missed? I don't think I've missed that many on PC, really. But no, that's definitely not what we're doing. It's just like, port report, I think, is really important from a consumer aspect, and I can get that out on day one. And then sometimes one thing leads to another, and I just can't do the WTF is in, like, the appropriate amount of time. And then it just, like, ends up being put on the back burner and just doesn't happen anymore. So, yeah, that's something to consider. We've definitely not transitioned out of that, though. We're absolutely, in fact, there'll be more of that. If we're using 15 minutes of game for the really, really small titles that are maybe genres I'm not too into, then WTF is will focus more on AAA and focus more on the kind of premium indies that are in the genres that I really dig. And, you know, it'll be less of, hey, Coffin Dodgers, as a WTF is, because that could just be a 15 minutes of game, you know? Okay. How is the cancer follow-up coming? Yeah, remind me of that. I've got a CT in October. That's a regular scheduled thing. Hopefully, I mean, we've seen no signs of it coming back, but the damn thing's insidious. You never know. Got to keep an eye out. I don't know what that means. Already answered that. Have you played Dwarf Fortress? No! Far too complicated. Absolutely no. I love reading about Dwarf Fortress. Like I love reading about Eve. I would never play it, I don't think. Not in a million years. Rebark, if you're putting together an elevator pitch to tell a developer why they ought to bring a game to PC, what would you say? Or what does PC game development give you as a dev that console development would not? Modability, certainly. I think on PC, you often develop a game that can be sold over a number of years. On console, you're focusing on those first couple of months, and that's it, for the most part. Modability can mean that your game can last for a long, long time, and that means that people will keep buying it. So that's like the biggest advantage, I think. And of course, like, no used games on PC is actually an advantage. And sales culture maybe replaces that, but you can do sales, you can keep selling your game years after it comes out. And modability means that your game can continue to be sold maybe a decade after it comes out. That's great. That's like the biggest thing as to why you should bring a game to PC. Yeah, that's the biggest reason, I think. You know, the long tail. And the fact that games continue to sell well on PC well past the date that they would become irrelevant on console. Do you think that Valve opening the floodgates on Steam has hurt the indie game industry as a whole? I mean, to some degree, maybe, but, like, it's the same comment that I made in the video about Airscape. Indies were always hurting, one way or the other. If they weren't hurting because they were not able to get on Steam, they're now hurting because there's too many games on Steam. The fact of the matter is the vast majority of games don't sell a lot of copies. That's going to be true regardless of what Valve does, I think. You can't force people to buy video games. I don't think it's helped. You know, I certainly think that there are definitely games that deserve to do better that get buried. And that sucks. But then again, simultaneously, before that, there were games that deserved to be on Steam that didn't get there. So, it's a double-edged sword. We actually already did this. Chaos Sniper asks, have you ever thought of running like a fun tournament for an older RTS? We kind of already do that with the Axiom channel. So you can actually go over to youtube.com/TotalBiscuit. You'll find Axiom playing against each other in a bunch of old RTS. You have unlimited budget and time to make a game. What game is it? Ah, God, I don't know. I have no idea. Not a clue. I always had... I don't know. That's too open. I never really thought about making games, weirdly enough. As strange as it sounds. Nowhere. Oh, God. Here we go. Do you think Anita Sarkeesian has a point? Absolutely. No doubt. Like, here's the thing. Like, I think people view all of this in a way too extreme fashion. Like, it's like, you're for or against this. You're in this camp or that camp. No. Almost everybody has a point in whatever they're discussing. Anita has plenty of decent points. The problem is they're couched in a lot of rhetoric, which I don't agree with, which I think actually dilutes the effectiveness of the point, and it makes it harder to agree with everything. I still watch the videos. Like, I disagree with a lot of what she says, and I personally find her presentation style kind of dull. But simultaneously, like, there are plenty of games that don't treat women very well. That's true. The thing is, like, she's not the first person to say this. Like, we've been saying this for 20 fucking years. A lot of us have been saying that. And then there's some things that she says which are just kind of not based in reality. Like, the main problem I've got with it is not saying, hey, these games don't present women well, because that's right. They don't. In most cases. Sometimes she misrepresents it, like the Hitman thing. But then it's what comes after that I have the problem with. It's like, and this leads to, and I'm like, but does it? Because that sounds a great deal like violent video games lead people to violent acts. It's like, these games are sexist. Well, it's like, one, what's your definition of them being sexist? She has her definition, I have my definition. There are some games which are absolutely sexist. You know, Right to Hell Retribution. Yeah, if there's the one thing that I would go to bat with Anita on, it's Right to Hell Retribution is a sexist fucking video game. No doubt about that. Like, the way that it treats women who are often in really, like, awful positions as a reward. Like, there's some really awful stuff in that game. Like, you save a woman from a rape, and then she has sex with you. Like, what? That's nuts. That's awful. That's horrible. That's a terrible depiction. That game has no meaningful female characters in it. It's sex as a reward. It's awful. It's what comes after the pointing out that these games kind of suck when it comes to portraying women that I have the problem with. And the whole idea is like, well, you can't have a sexy woman in a game because that's objectifying. And the double standard with men as well. The argument likes to be made that, oh, well, a sexy man's a power fantasy, whereas a sexy woman is objectifying and, like, unrealistic standards. Like, are you kidding me? Like, unrealistic standards? Like, almost every male video game hero on the planet is unrealistic standards for people, like, for male gamers, that they can't possibly live up to, in terms of the physique and what they can do and their ability and all that sort of thing. And there's a lot of other problems with it, like, there's gay erasure, bi erasure, basically saying, oh, well, these games are just to appeal to teenage men. It's like, what about lesbians? What about bi females? All that kind of thing. There's a lot of problems with the argument. I don't disagree with the overall principle. Absolutely, games should do a better job with women. Absolutely. Like, is that even a question? Like, if people are turning around and saying, no, they shouldn't, then I'm like, really? They could do a better job. That doesn't mean you have to shoehorn in. You're going to tick a bunch of boxes for diversity as you go down the list. You should be able to make your vision. But, like, always, like, consider, maybe we could do a better job here, and maybe that will actually make the game better. Maybe it will make the game appeal to more people without compromising the vision. It's like, where do you draw the line between compromising the vision and just and being kind of more inclusive, I suppose? Because, like, a lot of it, it's like, did we really compromise the vision by saying you should put some clothes on? To some degree, but then again, did it really matter at the end of the day? Did it? There's issues that I have with people saying, like, iconic characters should change the way they look, necessarily, because often their look is also iconic. But then again, there's new characters, they're like, yeah, honestly, this person could be wearing more clothes and could be presented better, and why does the camera linger on the ass so much, and all that sort of thing. There's plenty of valid problems. The issue that I have is I wonder if those videos do more harm than good, And that's the issue that I've got with it. I think that, like, there's definitely a bit of disingenuous stuff going on with those things. Because I think most people can agree that, more women characters in games is a good thing. And that historically, maybe we've not done a great job as an industry there. Totally. I think we've done a better job than she thinks we have, but I still think that there's a lot that needs to be done. I don't think the ends justify the means. I don't think when you're taking things to a conclusion when you're creating an argument and then working backwards to justify it, rather than doing your research and then coming to a conclusion. I don't think that's the best way of doing things, and that's obviously agenda-driven. No doubt about that. And I don't think that's not the best way to make things better. It might help, but I have to wonder how much it hurts in the process. And it's very divisive, which I never think is a good thing. Anyway, okay. Yeah, off that. I'll do a few more and then I'm going to wrap it up. How are you enjoying MGS5 so far? I'm mostly just playing Mad Max. I played a few hours of MGS5. I'll get back to it after I'm done with Mad Max. Any thoughts on Age of Decadence? No. I don't really have any thoughts on that. I haven't played it. I'm sorry. Could you maybe do a series of videos about your favorite retro games? I could, but then again, that takes away time from doing new games, and I think that's a disservice. I really do. I genuinely think that's a disservice to people. It's like, these new games need coverage. So I'm going to cover some 20-year-old game that doesn't? That doesn't seem right. Every now and again I do it with, like, This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things, which is obviously a very, very infrequent series, and I do need to do more of that, but mostly I just avoid it for that reason. It's space that could be taken by covering something new, which I think is more useful. Already covered this. What else we got? Will I join Crendor for the Blood Bowl League? Yes. I'm definitely playing that. I don't know what the format's going to be, but I'm playing. Absolutely. Okay, next one. Already done that. How often do you have a problem with games making you nauseous? It's mostly field of view related. It's very, very rare that I get it anywhere else, although I did have a problem with Resident Evil 5, because it's so narrow. Mostly with third-person games, it's not really a big deal, but first-person games, any, like, field of view that's maybe lower than 80, I definitely feel uncomfortable, so that's not great. Most of the time, a game doesn't make me nauseous, though, unless it's a field of view issue. Does it ever make you feel uncomfortable or feel appropriate when people have told you that the My Little Problem video has saved the life of one of their loved ones? No, it doesn't. It's quite the opposite. That's exactly what it was supposed to do. If that happened, it did its job. Definitely. That's good. That's very good. So no, I don't feel uncomfortable if people tell me that at all. It can obviously become, getting like the big long emails can sometimes be a bit uncomfortable because I'm like, wow, this is heavy shit. Like, how do I deal with this? Like, I'm not really kind of an agony aunt or whatever, and I'm not really equipped to deal with a lot of that stuff because I'm going through my own stuff as well. But little messages like that, yeah, it's great. It feels really good. I don't want to be seen as someone that can, like, give advice on this subject because I really can't. My only advice is get checked. Okay. Favorite childhood game? Streets of Rage 2. Yeah, definitely. I don't have a question about that. I used to sneak over to my friend's house next door to play Streets of Rage 2. I'm pretty sure at one point, because we had kind of an open door thing where, like, because we knew our neighbors really well, so we're just kind of, we didn't have to knock or anything. I went into the house at one point, the kid wasn't there, and I'm pretty sure the parents were shagging upstairs. That was really awkward. Didn't know what it was at the time. Now I think I realize what it was. Oh my god. Anyway. Will you have Chi back on the podcast at some point? Nika Harper kind of ran all over her in the episode. I don't believe everyone gets run over by Nika Harper. Yeah, we should invite her back. Absolutely. Totally. Looking forward to another Blood Bowl tournament. It'll be horribly frustrating, but yeah, I guess. Are you interested in Just Cause 3? Absolutely. Just Cause 2 was a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. Hopefully it runs well and isn't buggy as hell. It's another open world game, but like they take it up to 11, so I want to see what they do with it. What? I don't know what you're talking about. There is no 5-year-old girl. With what would I like to see dug up and modernized? I mean, I still think that it would be good to see that done to the original Deus Ex, but that's kind of being done anyway with the mods, so that's not really relevant. There's a lot of old strategy games, both turn-based and RTS, that I think could really use a coat of paint and an improved UI. I would like to play... This has kind of been done, actually. I was about to say, I'd like to play the original XCOM, but with a better UI. It's like, oh, that's Xenonauts. What is, I can't think of one off the top of my head other than that, but, like, a lot of the old turn-based strategy. Master of Magic. There's a great one. I'd like to see that remastered. You say, oh, well, they kind of did that with Fallen Enchantress. Yeah, but it's not the same. It's like, I want to see that same game, like, polished up properly. because a lot of those old games had really clunky UI. Maybe Alpha Centauri as well, because Beyond Earth is nowhere near as good as Alpha Centauri. The UI on that's a bit old. We could do with work on that, I think. Are the figurines coming out? I answered this during the co-optional podcast panel live. There's a lot of logistical issues with it. I hope they will, but I can't guarantee it. Do you believe World of Warcraft is in danger of losing subscribers and no confirmed release date for Legion? It's always losing subscribers. I mean, eventually that game will die. It's just, when is it going to happen? So, yeah, of course, there's always a risk of that. Nope, haven't listened to Ghost. Don't know what that is. Do you like the original PS1? Not really, because I never owned one in the first place, and a lot of those games really aged badly. Like, the old Polygon games run pretty terribly. But, you know, some of the 2D RPGs and 2D brawlers are still pretty good. I was a Saturn guy myself. I never owned a PS1, at least not until a lot later. Nater asks, will you ever have Felicia Day back on the podcast? That's up to him. Love to have her back. I said him, didn't I? Oh, God, I'm so sorry. That is up to her. I would love to have her back. She was a great guest. She's very busy these days. Who else we got? A couple more. I might as well do to the top of the hour. 3 hours is reasonable, right? As a broadcaster, what is one outlandish streaming feature you'd love to see on a streaming platform that would either make the experience or the viewer experience better? Oh, God, that's difficult. I think I've got most of what I need now. What would be useful? I actually don't know. Like, for the kind of streams that I do, I think I've already got what I need, you know? Oh, there's one thing. Instant replays. Replays. That would be great. You can do it with some pretty hardcore hardware and software. But the regular, not so much. Like, a regular streaming software can't do that. I'd love to be able to do, like, an instant replay with a kind of picture-in-picture and be able to do it from my own computer. The thing is, like, usually you need a production guy to do that kind of thing anyway, so it's kind of pie in the sky. But that would be great. What exactly do you not like about horror games? I get too scared too easily. Simple as that. I don't like being scared. I don't find being scared fun. Simple as that. Some people love being scared. I don't. Really? I don't know what that... No. Any plans for an official moderated place for content discussion? I mean, Twitch chat, right? Aren't you in it at the moment? And are you asking if we'd set up another forum or something like that? I don't know. Like, I think that's a great way to build up yet more resentment from the subreddit, which we absolutely don't need at the moment. And I don't know if it would help. We've had forums before. Anyone that used to be around WoW Radio knows that I was terrible on the WoW Radio forums. And that was moderated. I don't think there's like a hardware solution to this, or like a software solution to the situation. Opinion on Bernie Sanders. Political stuff. He seems like the most sensible candidate out of the lot of them. Like, all the others seem crazy. They do. They really do. They all seem crazy. I'm sorry. I can't relate to any of their policy. You know, I'm left-wing. I'm left-wing by British standards, so there's no candidate in this country that really represents my political viewpoint. Bernie Sanders is maybe the closest to that. So yeah, he seems alright. Who knows? From what I've heard of him so far, I agree. I did the compatibility quiz that Dodger did. I got 98% compatibility with Bernie Sanders' policies. Like, a few minor little things that are really not that important. For the most part, I agree with what he says. Mostly. So yeah, sure. He seems alright. But ultimately, I can't vote, so who the fuck cares? I don't have an answer to that. I don't know. I'd have to look. What's the last game you actually ran out to buy in excitement? Have you any regrets in your Steam library? Tons of... I don't know. I don't really regret buying games anymore because it's not really a big deal. Like, it's for work. So even if a game's bad, it doesn't really matter. There's plenty of games that disappointed me, sure. What was the last game I ran out to buy in excitement? Guilty Gear, actually. Yeah, Guilty Gear. I actually went and was really excited to buy that, and I played it, and it was great. So yeah, Guilty Gear is that is my answer to that. Which OC Remix album interested you most? Oh, the Dark Side of Phobos, clearly. It's the best thing they've ever done. So good. Plus, like, it really comes down, like, whether or not I appreciate the game. A lot of the Final Fantasy stuff, because I didn't play a lot of Final Fantasy games, I'm not so interested in. But, yeah, do something like Doom. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And, of course, the Deus Ex album. Okay. If you were to start a new channel, what would it be? A tabletop channel. Absolutely. Do you believe that early access will go the same way as Steam Greenlight removing it? No! They won't remove early access. You kidding me? There's far too much money being made out of that. Absolutely. No way. It's far too valuable. Would you ever consider playing the board game King of Tokyo on Cautional Lounge? I'd rather play King of New York, because I think it's better. The King of Tokyo is alright. But there's like one optimal strategy to win. I think King of New York really enhanced the game. The problem is getting a good copy of it on Tabletop Simulator, and I don't think there is one yet. But I'll absolutely play it. It's one of the few games I actually know how to play. So there you go. What are they? Very unlikely. It's very unlikely that I will dress in a bee costume for the Halloween podcast. Thank you very much. Do you think that tech tubers like Linus getting things like 6 Titan X's for use in the editing rigs is a really bad ethical concern? It's... Hardware reviews weird because the vast majority of hardware reviewers run on stuff that they've got from companies anyway. So, is there an ethical concern there? Potentially. But simultaneously, like, how else do they do their job? Like, they're in an even weirder position than we are because hardware's really fucking expensive. Like, you can't go out of your way and just buy, like, hey, I'm going to buy 2 Titan X's to review Titan X and SLI. You can't do that. You can't afford it. It's ridiculous. So often, their rigs end up running on stuff that's provided by companies. And sometimes that means that they'll end up, like, skewing towards either AMD or Intel or either AMD or NVIDIA. Is that an ethical concern? There's always the potential for that. I think, you know, if you just disclose it, it's not really too big a deal, but... I mean, what ethical concern is there? Would they fudge the benchmarks? Would they say things that are untrue? I think, like, with hardware, it's very objective a lot of the time. So it's very hard to fudge the numbers. It's very hard to sort of be biased without people realizing that you're being biased. With software, with games, it's very subjective. So you can be biased and it's not readily apparent. But, like, if I benchmark a game and says, this game gets blah blah FPS, then either I'm right or I'm wrong. And if it turns out that's not the case because some other benchmark has come up with a different result, people are going to turn around like, what the fuck, dude? Are you lying to us? So I think you've always got to keep that stuff in mind when you're getting free stuff from companies, totally. But still, with hardware, it's almost like you need to, for the most part. Because, like, returning hardware and things like that is something that's completely impractical and very, very difficult to do. Like, ripping hardware out of a machine, sending it back, it's very expensive to do that. You've got to send it by Assured, usually by UPS. It's a pain in the ass. So, I mean, I can see where people are coming from when they're concerned about the authenticity of hardware reviewers, but simultaneously, I think it's like a weird reality of the industry that you don't really have much control over. Can't answer that. We don't need new shows. I don't have time to do the current shows I currently do, so can't really do that. Are you gonna play some Arcade mode with me someday? Crank! Yes, of course. You're way better at the game than I am, but there you go. You can carry me. What are some of your favorite Viking metal bands? Viking. I mean, Amon Amarth is the obvious example, right? I think that's the only one that, like, is blatantly Viking, right? Because there's some that have, like, Viking-esque sort of stuff, like Korpiklani and Sapphirem sort of have some stuff like that. And maybe Equilibrium and possibly Durasas, but they're not really Viking, per se. They've just got that kind of theme to them. Already answered that. What was your first esports competition managed or played in? I have barely played in any esports competitions. I mean, obviously I created Shoutcraft and did that, but the one that I played in, I think there's only a couple. There was like the Lord of the Arena that I played in, and then there was that Dota thing for charity, which was with Dendy. Do you even call it an esports contest? I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I've played in any real one. Okay, when will you fire Crank? I will not fire Crank. God damn it. Alright, what else we got? Have you ever played Red Dragon Inn? I have not. I've been told I should. Apparently it's pretty good. Get a few more questions in before we do it. Have I played Witcher 3? I actually haven't. I haven't got around to it. It's a big RPG. I generally don't play those anyway. There was other things I need to do. A lot of the time I just don't get to play for pleasure. I've got to play for work. So, like, spending a lot of time in a huge RPG that I can't cover for ethical reasons seems like an inefficient waste of time. Maybe I will eventually. Hope so. I've already answered that. Do you see yourself doing more industry and media-focused commentary in the future? Yeah. It resonates well. I like doing these little kind of casual think pieces. And sometimes it's like, it's a topic that it's like, it's better addressed in its own video as opposed to being like part of content batch or whatever. So yeah, you know, that stuff usually works pretty well. So yeah, sure. Donald Trump, don't even get me started. That guy's an idiot. What else we got? What percentage of games do you play nowadays just for fun rather than critical coverage? Very few. Very few. I mean, it's not like I can't find fun in games that I'm also critically covering, but games that I don't cover and play, there's like 2, you know? It's mostly, for me, Dota and Dirty... well, I guess 3. Dota, Dirty Bomb, and Hearthstone are those, like, the 3 games that I regularly play. You just don't have the time for it. Because you think every game you're playing for fun, well, I could be playing somebody else's game that deserves coverage, you know? How do I plan to crush the angry army in the upcoming war? Well, a bunch of console peasants, so it shouldn't be that hard. What else we got? No, already covered that. What is your favorite arcade game? Most Lycan games, like Virtua Cop 2, House of the Dead. Like, I really like Lycan games a lot. So... yeah, Virtua Cop, House of the Dead, Dead Storm Pirates is really, really great. Time Crisis in some situations. House of the Dead 2 is good. House of the Dead 3 was good with the shotguns. Once a fan of the Uzis with House of the Dead 4. Ghost Squad, Project Ghost. Yeah, basically it's all light gun games. Is there a list of the music you use? That's on last.fm/user/TotalBiscuit. Favorite Blind Guardian album? I don't know, they're all good. I don't think I have a favorite. I think that they're all pretty great. I know it's a cop-out, but yeah, I like them all. Any chance of you playing Rocket League on the channel or off the channel? I'm not a huge fan of that game. Probably not. How likely do you think it is that the pre-order nonsense gets rolled back or changed for the better? Minimal. Probably not. They've invested too much in it now. And it'll probably be successful, as it always is. Like, it's a slow pushback against this kind of thing. I don't think they're going to roll it back. Seems very unlikely. Because, honestly, like, the amount of people that would actually boycott the game over that is minimal. What's your opinion on Japanese devs starting to take PC more seriously, bring the game to Steam? Welcome. Please don't lock your game logic to your frame rate. Stop it. 60, please. 60. It's great to see these games coming over, but if they're all locked at, like, 30 FPS, then that kind of sucks. A lot of the Tecmo Koei stuff is like that. So yeah, maybe they'll just change their development habits over the next few years, so that isn't really the case. But it's like, welcome. You know, it's not bad that even if they port it at 30, it's like, it's still either that or nothing. I'd obviously prefer if they did it better, and I think that they need to address the concerns of the platform, but even then, that's still good for people that don't mind that sort of thing. Like, they still have access to the game, whereas they otherwise wouldn't have it. So that's a net positive, right? Surely. Have you watched The 100? Nope. I have not. Already answered that. Are we going to play Star Wars Armada on Co-optional Lounge? No, because it's a 2-player game. That's not... We will, maybe, if we ever get around to it, sometime in 20 fucking years, do an actual tabletop video of it. Because I have it at home. I want to play it with Jen, so maybe we'll do that. Have you watched The Brink on HBO? What's your opinion on it? Not that funny. I don't like the writing. It's dumb humor for the most part. Clan Wars, talked about that. Did you like Deep Space Nine? It's my favorite Star Trek. I still think it's the best one. Best character development. You know, they did a lot of story arcs in that game where... Damn it! This is what happens. I do games too much. They did a lot of story arcs in Deep Space Nine, whereas they did a lot of Monster of the Week stuff in the other Star Treks. So I thought Deep Space Nine did it way better, having those story arcs and real character development. So I was a big fan of that. Any films you're looking forward to? Is there? That's a good question, actually. Is there? No. I mean, I don't really look forward to films. I just go and see them at random, so... Not really. I mean, I'm curious to see how Warcraft turns out, but I'm not holding out any hope. What do you think of the Kickstarter Tabletopia? Basically a paid tabletop simulator with tight integration for games they offer. Good. More competition is good. I think that it's good that if they can provide an official platform with really good versions of games so that the studios get paid for the games, that's good. Because right now, Tabletop Simulator is really like a better ask forgiveness than ask permission kind of situation. And like, what I really want, I want to be able to buy a virtual version of a game for a lower price and use it. I don't want to feel like I'm having to get a dodgy pirated version to play those games. If Tabletopia ends up offering that, then that's great. Do you believe we now live in a time where movie games are good, or did we just get lucky with the games we got? I don't think movie games are good. I think there's a difference between releasing a game in time for a movie and releasing a game after it. Because, like, Mad Max, you say, oh, it's a movie tie-in. Yeah, but it's pretty good. Yeah, but the movie came out last year. You know, it's the problem with tie-in games is that they were rushed and they were released to cash in on a movie's release. Those games are almost always going to suck because of the way that they're developed, because of the environment they're developed in. Games that are not developed that way, such as like Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay, end up being pretty good as a result, for the most part. So I don't think that's ever going to change. It just comes like, if you give a bunch of money to a crappy studio and give them 3 months to churn out some nonsense to appeal to kids with the latest movie release, it's going to suck. It's as simple as that. There's no way around that. Right now, it still sucks. It mostly just sucks on mobile now, though, instead of console. Okay, one more question. No. Let's find one more good one. Already answered that. Okay, that's a money question. Okay, I guess we'll talk about it. Flyfunner asks, you often mentioned that the ad revenue from YouTube has experienced quite a cut. How does this affect Axiom, and what kind of impact did this have on other aspects of your life? It didn't affect Axiom too much because Axiom, for the most part, is funded now by sponsors, so we're pretty much okay there. Like, obviously, we still have to put money into it, and we've invested a huge amount of money into that team, but... And that, it makes it harder when money drops, of course, but we have multiple revenue streams at this point. Like, if we have a bad dip on YouTube, like, we still have Twitch subs, we still have merchandise, we still have the occasional brand deal, we still have Jen's stock portfolio and things like that. We're okay. You know, you don't need to worry about us. We're totally fine. I'm more worried about the channels that were barely scraping by before and are now struggling. I think that, you know, through crowdfunding and Patreon, there's definitely ways to survive now, which is good, that didn't exist previously. I hope that we never have to... It sounds cruel to say resort to that. I don't want to resort to asking for money just for the sake of making content rather than saying, here's a service and here's a product. I think that's fair. No, it's not affected us that much. Obviously, it sucks, but, like, we make a good amount of money. You don't need to worry about us. All right, that's going to wrap it up. That's 3 hours of Q&A. I'm sorry for the people that I didn't cover, because we keep scrolling. Look at this. God damn. I'm sorry for those that I couldn't cover. I'm sorry. There's the infinite scroll going. It's still going. It's still going. I'm so sorry. But that's all I could cover in 3 hours. That's it. Oh, okay. I'm tired now. I need to go do a 15 minutes of game and also check on my stew. Thank you very much for watching, folks. I absolutely appreciate those who have continued to subscribe. You're awesome. Sorry, I guess, if you were upset over the last few days about the subreddit thing. It sucks for everyone concerned, and nobody won there. And that sucks. So yeah, sorry if anyone that got burned by that. It doesn't matter if it was my fault or not. It's like, someone's unhappy associated with something we do. That sucks. Okay, cool. Thank you very much for watching, folks. And the Polaris draft, I believe, is tomorrow. So keep an eye on the Twitter for that. We're going to be drafting our teams for the big Polaris Civil War tournament. So that's going to be interesting. All right, that pretty much wraps it up. We can end on maybe a little bit more Guardian Heroes. We'll see you next time.